across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. It's just coming up 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is Talk. We are, of course, the home of common sense. You know that. You've been listening to MG this morning. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is fantastic to have you on board. Guys, we've just got one more day of the sweltering heat. Tomorrow it's going to be normal again. We can all be sane again. And the BBC can stop telling us we're all going to die as if we were, I don't know, IDF soldiers facing Bob Villan at Glasgow. Who knows? We're going to be talking about that today, of course. Don't forget, if you missed anything on the show, if you missed anything on the show yesterday, we had a rip-roaring show yesterday, if I say so myself, mainly because the guests are the amazing callers, obviously. Do please take a look at our YouTube page. We've got a YouTube page, obviously, for Talk, but also we've got the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. I know, it's a clever title. And that's my own YouTube page. And if you hit subscribe, you will never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Keir Starmer faces the biggest rebellion of his premiership. Biggest rebellion, frankly, of pretty much any Prime Minister in decades, as dozens of backbench Labour MPs are still expected to either vote against or abstain against his plans to restrict disability benefits, despite a major, huge climb down to his rebels over this welfare bill, which is going to cost 2.5 billion quid to the Treasury. Oh, aye, that's you and me, which, by the way, has already been spent by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. This, of course, comes just days before the anniversary of his landslide election last year. Not going so well, is it, Prime Minister? Plus, it's been revealed today by the Taxpayers Alliance that thousands of people with conditions such as alcoholism, obesity and even acne are being given welfare payments to improve their mobility. I'm not quite sure why having spots means you can't get around, but there we are. They get free access to brand new cars. That's included. We'll be talking about that. Plus the furore over the BBC's Glastonbury coverage and those horrific chants from Bob Villan, a punk rapper duo from the dark ghettos of Ipswich. The latest on that, it emerged that BBC boss Tim Davie, the Director General, was actually at Glastonbury on the very day, on Saturday, when the BBC broadcast those live death chants against the IDF by Bob Villan. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, gave a statement yesterday, said there was clearly a problem with the BBC's leadership, and given a number of editorial failures in recent months, doesn't just mean this. And Avon and Somerset Police have said the criminal investigation has been launched into performances not just by Bob Villan, but also by Kneecap at Glastonbury as well. The big fuss in advance is all about Kneecap, where one member is facing charges under terrorism legislation. But interestingly, Bob Villan's being the big I am, doing really, you know, Bobby, the singer, Mr. Big I Am, now faces losing their management, their agents. They've dropped them completely. Oh, and he's lost his US visas for his US tour. So how's that working out for you, mate? Plus, in major breaking news that affects all of us, the Royal Train is set to be scrapped after 150 years in service. The annual accounts for the Sovereign Grant were published today, and they fund the monarchy, and they show the King only used the train twice in the last year at a combined cost of almost £78,000 for 2 return trips. I mean, that's almost like a return ticket to Swindon out of London. I mean, you know, you got a bargain. Anyway, this is Talk. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Welcome also to Tom Slater, who's editor of Spiked Online. You know him well, regular here on a Tuesday. Always great to get you in the studio. You're delighted to be here. He's already said before we came on air, he's not actually going to leave because we've got the air conditioning.
It is too comfortable in here.
It's just,
you're not going to be able to kick me out for the whole day.
It's pleasant. I did think when Ian Collins came on yesterday, I was just going to sit in the corner read the papers and just stay in the cool. So much to talk about. We focused an awful lot yesterday on what's happened at Glastonbury. We will come to that. But the question today we're asking everybody, and again, you can have to put your thoughts in on everything, as you know, but dozens of rebel Labour MPs are still expected to vote against Keir Starmer's welfare reforms today. Votes likely to be around 7 p.m. This is despite the major climb down, a major U-turn by the Prime Minister on disability benefits and who's going to be hit by these reforms. I want to know your reaction to that. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. So do get in touch. Can't wait to get to those calls. We'll talk actually to Ian Duncan-Smith, former Work and Pension Secretary to the Tories, who actually brought in universal credit. This is also affected by these reforms, to find out what he makes of both the reforms and indeed the climb down. But Tom, to come to you first, I mean, this isn't just about the fact that our welfare system needs reform. We haven't got any money and we can't keep spending tens of billions of pounds we don't have. It's also about there's a moral issue in terms of duty to work and people actually having a better life if they do work. But there's also a matter of the Prime Minister's authority. Where do you want to focus?
I mean, on all three of those, it's a catastrophic failure, isn't it? And this isn't welfare reform at all. This is at best tinkering around the edges. It's going to leave pretty much everything in place for those who claim these benefits existingly. You then look at, OK, is it actually going to save any money? I mean, as you've already suggested, the money that will be saved here is going to be swallowed up almost instantly. We're going to have another conversation about where the money's going to come from in order to continue to meet the fiscal rules that have been set out. And then you think about the political questions, as you say. Keir Starmer on paper has a huge majority. This is someone who should be riding high 1 year into his premiership.
I mean, over 400 MPs and working majority of 156.
This is an incredible situation in which you've had, first of all, such a plunge with the public this quickly, but to have your own parliamentary party revolt against you, a party, let's not forget, that was stuffed full of Starmer loyalists. They were very tightly controlled who was selected.
Yeah, the Corbyns, Easters were largely
absolutely. You know, the kind of Starmerite loyalists are all over this party, and yet even they're feeling emboldened to rebel, which is a really bad sign for any Prime Minister.
Labour MPs largely don't vote for welfare reform. I mean, Tony Blair's biggest rebellion that he faced was over welfare reform. There is just, again, you've got to remember, you know, Labour MPs are often elected by people on welfare. Gordon Brown's entire shtick as Chancellor of the Exchequer, other than orchestrating the end of boom and bust, how'd that work out, everybody, was basically putting everyone on the payroll. If everyone gets working tax credits and this and that, so even people who are working will get benefits. One of the biggest lies about these reforms, I mean, it affects universal credit, but it also affects the PIP payments, personal independence payments. And everyone says these are they're a working age benefit. You know, you can only get them if you're between 16 and 65. But also, everyone says, but people are working. This is a benefit that people get to help them work. Well, the majority of people who apply are working. The majority of people on PIP are not. Only 1 in 8 people who are on this benefit, which supposedly is giving people greater mobility and help with the extra expenses of living with a disability or an illness of some sort, that they will get that extra money and that will enable them to carry on working. When it would seem to do the exact opposite. And of course, we know, I completely get that there are illnesses and health problems that people have which are not visible, and that somebody who has a severe mental health problem, whether it's severe depression or something, but a severe mental health problem, is as unable to work as somebody is unable who in a wheelchair to, you know, be a scaffolder. You know, let's not pretend that, oh, you don't look disabled, you can't be disabled. We're not talking on that sort of stupid level. However, the massive explosion in the number of people who've been claiming disability benefits for mental health problems, particularly young people, since 2020, since COVID, since lockdown. And Fraser Nelson, you know, who the former editor of The Spectator, did a brilliant documentary showing how there's actually incentives in the system for people who are working there to sign people off and say, I feel suicidal, great, tick, guaranteed, you get your benefits, nothing to discuss. Massive exposure in those people, way out of kilter with any other country in the Western world. We clearly have a problem, but it doesn't look like Labour are willing to get to grips with it. And that's not only an issue for those people and for us taxpayers, it's an issue for our economic credibility as a nation, isn't it? Because we can't make the numbers add up.
Absolutely. It's also just a fundamental human tragedy. You have so many people, for whatever reason, some of it could be that they have become kind of trapped in this system because of the perverse incentives. In some cases, people almost feel kind of encouraged to kind of double down on their, say, mental ill health because of the fact that it's basically what's keeping just about a roof over their head. This is a horrendous tragedy. You've got vast swathes of towns and cities across the UK in which you've got huge numbers of people on some form of benefits, and also the extent to which, particularly if you look at the disability benefits as you've been talking about, the way that has exploded in such a short period of time. Do we genuinely think that those kinds of gains out of the blue, that as a result of the experience of the last 4 years, that those numbers should have shot up to the extent they have, it's a nonsense. And I think with Labour, as you were talking about earlier, it's been a long-term shift, but it's interesting, isn't it, that this is really just what the Labour Party is for now. It's for people. It's the party of welfare. It's no longer the party of work. It's no longer the party of Labour. Clue used to be in the name, and that refrain you hear from so many different Labour MPs: "I did not get into politics to cut people's benefits." I mean, also you get it on one level. They don't want to do anything that might push more people into poverty and whatever. And the result, but at the same time, the whole point should be about reforming the system in such a way that it means that people never have to be trapped in this situation in person.
But also,
which is not a great life if you're just existing off of the
and also, and we know again, if you had a bit of depression and then you're off work and you're on low income but you're off working and then you feel I can't get back into work. I mean, I think if there's anything guaranteed to give you depression, it's going to be that. Exactly. I know that lockdown hit a lot of people. I know a lot of people, especially with had teenagers and young adult children who were really damaged, hugely damaged by this. The solution is not for them never to work. The solution is not that and to be consigned to that life, but also loads of other countries had the same thing, and their youth are not in the same position. That's so they have much higher youth unemployment. So maybe it's just a fiddling of the figures that we've seen. But there we are. But we've had this massive rebellion threat, and 126 Labour MPs signed this reasoned amendment, which would basically struck down this bill. Over the weekend, we had sign of concessions. Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall did her I'm terribly caring. I'm wearing my sackcloth and ashes white shirt. I look like a Mormon. No, but it was like ridiculous in the House of Commons yesterday with these concessions. The concessions are massive. It's basically half of what they were planning to do. Yes, they are. One of the good things is this idea that you're right to sort of try. So we've had this situation where people can't try and get into work because if you get into work and it doesn't work out, you then lose all your benefits. You have to be reassessed. You start again, and then you might lose what you had. Well, maybe you didn't need what you had, you could argue, but that's a very big disincentive to people to try and improve their lives and to come off the taxpayer. But crucially, this idea that this benefit clampdown will not affect current PIP claimants. So only people from November 2026. So in a year and a half, only from then. There's this review carried out by Stephen Timms, who's one of the ministers. That won't report until then. So the argument is, there's going to be two-tier system. Yes. Virtue in any welfare system is change. You keep people on the old system. Same with pensioners. There's loads of different system changes. And then there's a two-tier. Universal credit, same thing. You end up with a two-tier system. We ended up with a two-tier system because you lot who are complaining about the two-tier system, the Labour whining backbench MPs, you lot won't allow the system to be fair and to affect everybody. But the reality is, people are supposed to be reassessed regularly. Now, currently, we're looking at reassessments only once every 3 years. But you only have to prove that you have this inability to do certain things for up to 9 months to get the benefits. And so people are languishing on these benefits. Some of the question, it's a point system. So, you have to, the idea is you cumulatively add up to a certain number of points. If you have 2 points for this and 2 points for that, 2 points for that, you need a bit of help, a bit of encouragement to take your medication, a bit of help to get dressed or whatever. But this one's not, the new requirement will be, you have to have 4 points in at least one category. We are talking about, when you actually read through these requirements, it's a very low bar. It's a very, very low bar indeed in terms of the point system. So to get 4 points, you need one of them needs supervision to help me stay safe or physical help to either prepare or cook a simple meal. Is that needs reminding or encouraging to eat or drink to get 4 points. Needs this is washing and bathing. You get 4 points. Needs physical help to be able to wash their body between the shoulders and waist. But you get 2 points if you need physical help to wash either your hair or body below the waist. These things are, it's quite bizarre. Dressing and undressing. Need physical help to be able to dress or undress your upper body, get 4 points. Your lower body, you only score 2 points. You can kind of understand why people say it's a bit random, but also there's an element where, these points, these are not high bars. Yeah, and it's the point at which the benefit system becomes so bloated and Byzantine and complicated that you end up having to have these almost quite kind of dehumanising, kind of prod the animal kind of tests. And I think it's one of those things about the welfare system. And then people feel they're unfair. Exactly, and people can fall out of it for seemingly arbitrary reasons. And just as people can end up on these benefits despite, by any kind of reasonable estimation, they probably shouldn't be receiving them, there's also going to be a lot of people who, for kind of computer says no reasons, who probably do need the help, not getting it. And that's why we need a good appeal system. Absolutely. That's why I think the issue of welfare reform is so pressing,
because it's important for the people who should absolutely be in receipt of it. I think there's a case that things should be far more generous to some people who are in real need, but at the moment, because it's going to absolutely everyone, we've basically redefined in some cases, a quarter of the younger population as in receipt of disability benefit. That's naturally going to have an effect on the people who really can't go about their daily lives without this kind of support.
I couldn't agree with you more. And again, even if we were spending the same money, but it was going to the right people, that would be better. But we don't have the money. We literally don't have the money. These MPs are quite happily, and Liz Kendall and the Prime Minister, to basically spend other people's money. They always talk about, we need to have representation from disability groups and things. Yes, but also, what about taxpayers? What about the people paying for this? What about the people who are struggling every day, who go out to work and just managing to struggle, but they're having to pay taxes to fund this? What about those people as well? You have to look at both sides on this. What do you make of the Taxpayers Alliance analysis of government data, revealing a huge rise in claims for PIP, personal independence payments, over the past 6 years, including thousands of people who've got it for conditions like this is 5,800 people for alcoholism, basically. It was only 1,400 back in 2019. 1,600 people for drug abuse, basically. We've got 5 people who got it for acne.
That must be some pretty bad acne. If that's
I mean, that's some. I don't know. I mean, 31 people have got it for food intolerance. 2,700 people have got it for OCD. 1,200 people have got it for sleep apnea, so they're not able to sleep properly. I mean, 6 have got it for writer's cramp. I mean,
dearie me.
I mean, come on. People are taking the mick.
I know, and the acne and the writer's cramp is obviously ridiculous on the face of it. Things like alcoholism and drug use, to the extent those people should be getting support, it should be to get off alcohol and drugs. It's not to be help them live their lives as alcoholics or drug addicts.
And again, there are huge numbers for obesity, because again, you get it for obesity because you then become unable to work and you might get depression and blah blah blah. But again, look at this. Payments for anxiety and depression rose from 23,500 back in 2019. 114,000 now.
Does anyone?
114,000.
Do people think there's something going in the water supply? Do they think there's something in the air? Like, this is quite clearly just a rise which has been enabled. But I guess there's been this culture shift. And these people may believe.
Oh,
absolutely.
Because we've infantilised people.
Our culture says to them.
If you look at what's going on in schools, I mean, if you don't have a kid, you're not aware of it. Literally, children. Look, my daughter just left a private, highly academically selective school. I mean, top-notch A students. Okay, about a third of the kids at that school got extra time for special needs of some sort for exams. About a third of well-off, very bright, well-educated kids need that extra time. Now, I can understand you need a bit of extra time. You got extra time because you've got, I don't know, dyslexia, that it's wrong to read, or you've broken your arm and it slows you down writing. I get that. But I'm sorry, I think this is just what we get. It's called cheating. But we're telling, I'd say it to the parents' faces. But children across the board are being told, well, you can't do that. Oh, poor you. And they're constantly told, teenagers are constantly told, oh, look inside yourself, examine your feeling. You might not feel well. And that's why you get, young people who turn up to work and they say, oh, I don't feel very good today. I'm going to go home. Sod off. Do a day's work. That's what will make you feel better.
There's a whole generation who've come to think being a bit sad is basically clinical depression, who think that, being anxious because life can be anxiety-making sometimes is some sort of condition that needs to be treated.
Anxious about your first day at work, anxious about an exam. Normal human emotion.
And then you had that cohort, and then they went for a pretty rough time with COVID. I think it's fair to say, but at the same time, you smash those two things together, and you've got that generation coming through who are primed to see themselves as mentally
but we've done that. Look, I want to hear your thoughts on all that. Give us a call 0344 499 1000. Do you think the MPs who are threatening to vote against this? Do you think that actually they're the moral souls fighting for disabled people? Or do you think actually it is immoral? It's virtue signalling nonsense, and we don't have the money, and actually there are an awful lot of people who they might think they might need these benefits, but they don't. We want to make sure the people who need the benefits are getting the benefits, and in fact getting more, so they can live a more comfortable life, because they've not lucked out in the game of life, and we should be helping them in a civilised society. But I'm not helping people who I think you could go and do an honest day's work. Let's also talk about Glastonbury. It's now been revealed that the DG, the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, not only was involved in decisions about Bob Villan and the rap duo from the dark ghettos, as I say, of Ipswich, and and their death to the IDF chants going out broadcast live on BBC iPlayer. Not only was he involved in some of those decisions, he was at Glastonbury on the day, just checking up on staff. Again, another sodding freebie that we all paid for, everybody. But lots of questions about his decision making. At the end of the day, he's the top guy in the job. I've always liked him, Davey. I've rated him. I thought he was a breath of fresh air. But he absolutely does not get that there is institutionalised anti-Semitism at the BBC. I'm very, very sure of it. There is. But he was present at the festival at the time. He was involved in some of the decisions about, cut the live feed. It wasn't cut for another few hours, but the streaming was still there. But we've now got the police are now saying they are investigating whether or not there are charges to be brought against Bob Villan, and indeed member of NECAP, who initially said, there should be riots outside the court next time NECAP appear in court over terrorism charges. Well, one member anyway, and then having to clarify, no, I don't want a riot, having to clarify that. But we've now also got the management for Bob Villan, United Talent Agency, MDDN, they've dropped them. Bye-bye, we don't want anything to do with you, you're toxic. We've also got the US authorities basically reneging on their visa. They've pulled their visa to do their US tour. Not working out so well for Bob Villan, but they're the big I am. But who do you think is to blame for all of this?
I mean, there's so many people to blame, isn't there? I mean, first of all, there's Bob Villan themselves and the disgusting, despicable, the glee with which they did that, the fact that they clearly knew the world was watching and that they chose that opportunity to let out this blood-curdling, Jew-killing slogan, absolutely despicable. But then it cascades down, doesn't it? The BBC, this was going out in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Yep.
If this man was just effing and jeffing to an extreme degree, they would have cut that live feed. And yet you're calling for the
strobe
murder.
lighting.
No, exactly. In what world does this make sense? We'll just let that pass.
Yeah.
You can only come to the conclusion that either these prejudices are shared by the people who work at the BBC or they're entirely blind to them. It's not obvious which is better at this point.
I'm pretty sure I know.
Tim Davie is another one. Why was he at Glastonbury? More forgivable. Most of his staff were there, so maybe it was just much easier to be able to catch up with them. But the fact that he was there, the fact that he actually, met with the teams, this was going on immediately after, the fact that, yes, they pulled it off of iPlayer, but they didn't put it off of the live stream. The quote that's in the paper today is, it would have been technically difficult, but in retrospect, we regret we didn't do it. So which one is it? It would have been
a button.
It's... again, there's a lot of blame to go around. It obviously, first and foremost, for the scumbags who said this on stage in the first place, the people who chanted along in the audience, there's no excuse for that. But the fact that this was also beamed into millions of people's homes is one of the things that will make it particularly chilling for British Jews in particular.
I know Jewish people who were at the festival who found it incredibly intimidating. Who weren't watching, they saw it, they saw the Palestinian flags, but yet not for us. Very, very intimidating. Again, as I was saying yesterday, how about we just have a music festival or a sports event, anything where we don't do politics? Maybe we could just take the politics out of these things. Maybe people, the virtue signalling. I'm more upset by Jade from Little Mix. It's just all appalling. So much more. We talked about that a lot yesterday. So much more to come on that. But do get in touch. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 10:25 is the time. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Coming up very soon, we're going to be talking about the Royal Train. We're going to be talking to Ian Duncan-Smith, former Work and Pension Secretary, about that Labour climb down on in the face of that rebellion from Labour MPs. Up next, we're going to take your calls. This is Talk.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises,
Billions blown,
botched U-turns.
and Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power,
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls, coming in thick and fast on that, clampdown. Well, that isn't a clampdown on welfare and the rebellion. Also going to be talking more about Glastonbury as well. Let's talk to Brian, who's in Brighton. Brian, you wanted to talk about this welfare bill. What do you want to say?
Hello, Julia.
Hello.
I'm a big fan. I'm very impressed with your show. Been listening for a long time now, but it's the first time I've actually took the mantle up and actually...
We're getting a lot of first-time callers at the moment. I feel that we should get a bell or something, but thank you. I really appreciate that, Brian. I'm a big fan of you listening. What do you want to say?
Right, so basically, I mean, this is an interesting topic. I'm sure what I'm about to say is representative throughout the country, but this is just a tiny little macro snippet of something that I've come across locally. And so basically, I have 5 kids. I'm self-employed. I work very hard on my business, just to give everyone a little bit of an idea of the turnover. You know, a typical HMRC quarterly submission will float between £5,000 to £6,000.
Yeah.
So work very hard, self-employed, and with the 5 kids, my partner's knitted into the local community far more than myself, and it would appear that a typical local lady, she had 7 children. It would appear that she's single, and at some point in time, her council house, which she's currently in, which is, I think, all this has been put on Facebook, so I've got no reservation in terms of explaining this. And so she's currently in a 3-bed house with her 7 children. The neighbouring, it's a semi-detached dwelling, and the neighbouring house at some point becomes vacant. So her neighbours have moved out.
No.
She approaches the local council. Again, all this is on Facebook. She approaches local council with the intent of actually moving into the property and creating one big dwelling.
Yeah.
The council reject her claims, and so she starts a campaign with local press, social media, and she gets a lot of support on certainly on Facebook, a lot of support. Obviously, she's claiming benefits. I believe her excuse was that she had some sort of phobia of going out. And
how did she get the kids to school?
She has a new car. That is again, she's explained how this is. Again, it's all on Facebook, so I have no reservations whatsoever. She wants to put her dirty washing out on social media. Well, I'm just explaining what she's already put out there for everyone to read. So it would appear that the car is actually, and it's one of these nice new MPVs, is actually bought and paid for by
Motability,
taxpayers.
Yeah.
And along the way as well, she's been quite happy to disclose how her children has got ADHD.
Of course they do.
Claims for them as well. So this house is she's got this ramped up the support with the local media, and lo and behold, the local council actually they climb down and they agree that she can take over the tenancy. So now we've got a full detached house. And they get the works done.
I was going to say, obviously there'll be works needed, so she gets those paid for. I mean, can I just ask, where's Dad or Dads?
I really don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't spend the time looking at these posts.
No.
This is just chit chat that happens over the dinner table, and obviously my partner's a little bit aghast, because one of the recent things is that for the 2nd year in running now, she's posted photos of all the bags being packed on the run up to Christmas, how they're all going to Lapland. Now,
wow, that's a fortune.
Exactly. Now I have 5 children, and her eldest is in the same year as my eldest, and one of her kids is in the same year as my eldest child, and I've had to tell her, look, we can't go to Lapland. We cannot. Now I actually think that my turnover is actually quite impressive considering it's a one-man band scenario, and I work hard.
You're working hard, and you can't afford to do the thing that she can, but she's living off benefits, no discernible earnings. But this is the frustration. Again, this will be, we don't know, whether the ADD, whether that involves their kids, doesn't involve perhaps these particular payments. But this is a problem. Everybody knows somebody, often in their own family, who is on benefits that they don't need and don't deserve.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I have noted, which is quite clear, is that in the school playground you've got the whole parent politics stuff, which is rampant, is that this whole ADHD, there seems to be a push for parents to somehow, or maybe it's just the school that we're attending, that it's almost like a badge of honour to...
No, there is absolutely a push, and schools get extra money, and it's in it. Families it's in everyone's interest, apart from, of course, the child to be labelled. And again, most ADHD, most teachers have told me they think most kids on ADHD, what they need is, less orange squash and fizzy drinks, and a bedtime routine and some fresh air and some physical exercise. And there are kids who seriously do have ADHD and they need help and focused help, but they are a tiny minority of those who have been labelled as such. Really appreciate that call, Brian. Look, I haven't got enough time to get to Ashley now, but I'm going to try and get to Ashley in the next half hour if I can. Actually, do apologise for that. I know you want to talk about Glastonbury. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking about, the Royal Train is to be scrapped. We're also going to be talking about the welfare reforms with Ian Duncan-Smith. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:36 is the time. Let's turn our attention right now to the Royal Train. I know it's very, very important stuff. I love that people are sitting there saying, like, we need to scrap some of these benefits. But no. Let's pay for, private trains for the royal family. Really? Well, apparently not anymore, because the Royal Train is to be scrapped. The King is to bid, he says, the fondest of farewells to the Royal Train, beloved by his late mother, Queen Elizabeth. The 9-carriage train, he said, just be described as a part of national life for many decades, is to be decommissioned in 2027. Instead, the King and his family are going to travel on commercial trains, I know, and in cars, and of course, 2 newly leased helicopters. But they will use sustainable fuel, so that makes it OK. Let's talk to Rafe Hadel-Manku, who's a royal commentator and joins us now. Very good morning to you, Rafe.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you. I have to say, we're just chatting about this with Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, who's with me in the studio, saying, didn't know they still had the train, but of course King Charles has barely used the train, and he used it for 2 return trips. 78 grand was the bill, which I was pointing out earlier is roughly the same as a return trip from London to Swindon these days.
Yes, basically, there's not much difference there between our own daily commutes. Look, we agree on most issues, Julia, but I think you and Tom and I will have different views
Yeah.
upon this. I'm an old traditionalist. I actually want us to keep the royal train. I'd love us to keep the royal yachts, but I do understand the royal family is a bit more sensible than I am about these sorts of things, and it is an expense now that can't be justified. Her late Majesty adored the train, and she used it greatly to a huge amount. But the King, of course, is reflecting the realities of the modern day. He's also trying to modernise the monarchy, and the necessity of having this train simply isn't there any longer. But actually, there's an opportunity here for the public actually to now see the royal train, because it's been reported that the royal train will go on public display at some point, and so it will become another great asset for the nation.
Yeah, I mean, again, something for people to go and look at. Queen and Prince Philip used it quite a lot for overnight visits around the country, so they could just sort of travel overnight and then be there in the morning or rest. It's rather nicely done up. It's sort of like, you know, the Orient Express, isn't it?
That's, well, a bit of a shabbier version of the Orient Express, because when the Queen used it, actually, the interiors hadn't been renovated for decades. But it was first brought in by Queen Victoria in 1840, became the world's first royal train. And yes, King George V preferred sleeping on it compared to staying with aristocrats around the country or whatever. And of course, the entire royal household can then stay and sleep on the train as well. So that also has to be factored into the cost. If they were going to be staying in hotels, those would be added expenses that don't get included.
That's a good point. Exactly. When the Prime Minister or the head of government or the head of state travel, there's a lot of other people, entourage, the security. So I suppose that there's an element there. Now we understand, you know, this is all part of the announcement on the sovereign grant, the annual accounts which were published late last night, and the sovereign grant funds the monarchy, but it's in return for a load of money that is given up by the Crown estate, isn't it? Explain how that works.
So yes, so in the old days under King George III, the king himself used to fund the running costs of the government with his own money. That became really expensive for George III, and so he agreed to exchange his revenue from the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate are properties, parts of the foreshore of the British Isles, to the government in exchange for something called the civil list. That was done away with a few years ago and replaced by something called the Sovereign Support Grant. So essentially, when a new monarch ascends to the throne, they agree to surrender their revenue from the Crown Estate, which is, you know, billions and billions of pounds, in exchange for a percentage. That was supposed to be 25% of the Crown Estate reserves would go to the monarchy. The King graciously decided to reduce that to only 12%. So 12% of the revenue annually from the Crown Estate goes to the
what you're saying is that the Queen was getting far more than she needed. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm sorry, they live free in all these palaces, some of which are owned by the nation. You know, if we're going to have a head of state, they need to be, you know, there's to be suitable security and pomp and circumstance. Otherwise, there's no point having them, I think. But you know, we are talking about huge sums of money.
The revenue from the Crown, I mean, the Sovereign Support Grant barely covers the costs, the running costs of the monarchy. And that includes the upkeep of buildings, which would need to be upkept by the state anyway. And in fact, it's interesting, you know, the cost of the Italian presidential palace is 4 times the cost of Buckingham Palace. And Buckingham Palace is going through a renovation right now. That would need to be done even if we didn't have a monarchy.
Oh, no, I completely accept that. Absolutely accept that. It's just a question of, like, the running costs. Now, the thing is, King Charles has pared down working royals. I mean, again, you know, Harry and the Duchess, you know, went off to America. There are many others. Like, he's pared it down very, very, very tightly. There are fewer people to pay for.
The monarchy is extremely effective. You know, it works out to the same. I think it's around 79 pence or whatever per person if you look at the core support grant, which is the same running cost as it does for the Irish presidency. It's about the same per person.
There's a load of other extra costs.
But the issue, of course, is that the monarchy has kept its funding stable for 4 years, despite all the pressures that we've had with inflation and the cost of living going up, salaries going up. The monarchy has been able to make those essential cuts to ensure that it does remain value for money.
Have they made cuts, or was there enough money in the system already? Is King Charles still taking plastic carrier bags full of cash for his charities, or has he stopped doing that?
Well, I'm not privy to His Majesty's...
That police investigation went away very quickly. I mean, again, I know, you all know, I'm a Republican, I'm not a monarchist, but I still think I expect certain standards to be upheld by anyone in that role, whether they're elected or unelected.
Look, I think we have in the monarchy an institution which is the envy of the world, and we are greatly fortunate to have in the presence of His Majesty a king who's so deeply committed to his peoples that he spent the entire duration of his time as Prince of Wales engaged in trying to improve the lives of British people, rather than being a playboy prince who could have been in Monaco playing on the roulette.
He could have been, yeah. I mean, he. I think one can be a monarchist and support the institution without having to, play along with this idea that everything that the royals do is absolutely wonderful and perfect and devoted to their people.
Well, no one is saying that, but I don't think you can deny that the Prince of Wales has been at the cutting edge of so many issues and causes which we now
I think he's wrong about climate change. I think he's wrong about talking to animals and plants. You know.
Well, no, whether or not you agree with him, the point is he has shown himself to be absolutely committed to the well-being of his peoples.
I don't know. I don't think there's any evidence for that statement. What evidence do you have for that statement, Ray?
All of the causes he's worked in for the homeless, for education,
that's important ones, yeah.
For spirituality, for interfaith dialogue, with the Prince's Trust, now called the King's Trust. I mean, the King has spent decades committed also to the built environment, with the sustainable farming and the work he's done at Poundbury and trying to make beauty and return beauty and aesthetics.
Okay, no, those are all good points. Let's
So you asked me to explain what he's done to help the British people, and I'm just explaining that to you. And the number of young people he's brought back into society who were homeless or on drugs and so forth, and they've now
his charities have done that work.
It's charitable, and that's the value of the monarchy. The monarchy is the backbone of civil society, and they help to support institutions and causes and charities which are decidedly unsexy and wouldn't get any media attention were it not for
having the royal patronage. No, you've made a very strong argument. I know most moderates would agree with you 100%. Rafe Hador-Mankin, thank you very much. Quick word to Tom Slater, who's a fellow Republican.
No, I mean, I think when it comes to the question of the monarchy, it's not necessarily the cost, it's the point of principle. And personally, I think just having what are basically overgrown charity fundraisers doesn't necessarily mean that I'm willing to be a subject. It's essentially where I'm coming from.
I'm a citizen, not a subject.
Yeah,
it's kind of
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, regardless of the people, I always said if the late Queen had stood for election, she'd have gone I'd have voted for her. She was fabulous. She did have a sense of duty. But I'm just, as you see, for us, it's a point of principle. 10:45 is the time. Go on, call in and shout at me. I don't mind. We're allowed to differ. You know, I always give you my honest point of view. I don't just say things to curry favour. At least you know that about me. 0344 499 1000. Do get in touch, particularly on welfare. We're going to talk to Ian Duncan-Smith about that. Up next, this is Talk.
In modern policing, there is a complete lack of common sense. common sense is good. There is no good judgment anymore. Somebody can come in, give a theatrical performance, say my feelings are hurt, and the police will investigate. So the police can actually be used as a vexatious tool to silence people, because if you come in, it's very much on your emotions and your feelings and your impact statement, and you can talk a load of BS, but if you can give a convincing performance, the police will come out and investigate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:48 is the time. Let's go straight to Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Conservative MP, of course, former Conservative Party leader and former Work and Pensions Secretary for 6 years under David Cameron. Thank you so much for joining us, Sir Ian.
Morning.
Right, let's get...
Are we afternoon?
Oh, no, not yet. Good late night in the Duncan-Smith household by the sounds of it. Let's talk about what is going on with these welfare reforms. Keir Starmer's planned these welfare reforms, which were, I think a lot of us saying they didn't go very far in the first place, tackling universal credit and PIP payments under disability benefit. And now we've had a massive climb down, a massive concession that any changes will only affect new claimants, not old claimants. We've still got, though, out of the 126 Labour MPs who said they would rebel against this vote in the Commons tonight, we reckon some 40 or 50 who could vote against or abstain. Are you on the side of the rebels or on the side of the government on this?
Well, in a way, I'm on neither side, really, because, first of all, the government produced a paper which was obviously produced by the Treasury. I went through this and I resigned back at the end of my time at the DWP simply because they were trying to top-slice a benefit. It never works if you top-slice it.
What does that mean?
Well, they've taken the entry-level qualifications to get onto the benefit. It's a complex benefit, but and they've just simply reduced them by an X amount. So in other words, they've taken it away. The problem is that by doing it like that, two things happen. The first is those who really, really genuinely need those benefits, and for example, 30 or 40% of anyone with serious cardiovascular problems will be taken out of that list. So you hit quite a lot of people who are very genuinely on the benefit.
Yeah.
What you don't do is you don't deal with the new entries, and particularly new entries in the mental health area where you need to target that. The second bit is they won't save much money because immediately they get refused, they will go to tribunal. And the tribunals, in the majority of cases, overturn that kind of decision and grant the award.
Yeah.
So they'll make even less than they think had they stayed with the original one. Now they've got rid of that and it's on entry. The trouble is, on entry right now, it may stop for a while a certain group of people, but again, they'll find a way through. What you need to do is what we recommended at the Centre for Social Justice, was to go on to those areas. The biggest area of people coming on is mental health. Yeah. And the biggest area of mental health that is claiming is depression and anxiety. Now, these two are incredibly treatable conditions. You don't need to have them on a benefit. What they need is some kind of stabilizing support work that gets them back to work. Work is a health treatment for people like that.
Yes.
They're not going anywhere near that. And of course, that's where you will make the majority of your savings, because the growth has come from mental health, massively from depression.
Well, this is it. We've had this extraordinary explosion in the cost of the health and disability benefits in this country, around 40 billion quid in 2019. And you did a lot on the universal credit when you were Work and Pensions Secretary to try and tackle some of these issues. It's set to rise to £100 billion by 2030, and the explosion has been since lockdown. And a lot of people say, well, a lot of people were very damaged by lockdown and what issues since. But again, we look at other countries who had similar experiences of lockdown, the same youth affected, and they've not seen this massive growth. And as you say, again, we've gone from, let's face it, benefits, the people who were claiming benefits, who a lot of us will question, it used to be backache, then it was stress, now it's depression and anxiety, but it's particularly younger people. This isn't even a good thing for the people who were claiming it, let alone for the taxpayers forced to pay it.
No, as one of the GPs that we looked at and spoke to said to us, we have medicalised normal life.
Yeah.
But now it's not possible to have a difficult time. You have a mental health issue. I'm generalising, but there is a real issue on this.
But it undermines the people who genuinely do have severe depression, severe anxiety, and who really do need that targeted help. But if everybody has got it, then nobody ends up getting treated.
Well, the problem is that when I left this, and just before 2019, we had the lowest level of workless households since records began. So the reforms and changes, even though some hated the idea, actually started getting more people back to work, fewer people getting on the benefits. What actually happened during COVID was they just got rid of all the checks, all the conditionality. It just ballooned. So immediately then, and the other bit I made a point was, we've now conditioned a new group in society to become in favor of claiming. You know, groups that would never have claimed for anything particularly now think that claiming is normal, which is what happened during COVID. So, you know, for the furlough scheme, all these new schemes where they chuck money at everybody, vast sums, which I just kept saying was ridiculous. You know, you stay on UC. So all of those are the problems. Deal with that end of the new entry, of the entries in the mental health area, because they can get to work.
Yeah, but to a certain extent, though, this isn't about the welfare bill. This is about a sort of societal change, almost like a moral case, a moral crusade, you know, about... You know, the moral duty, if you can work to pay for yourself and to contribute for others. And you'd have thought that a bunch of lefty Labour MPs would understand that. You thought they might have read a bit of Marx along the way when they were doing their sociology degrees, and they would have like gone, you know, yeah, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need. But now we're saying everyone's got a need, and I'm assuming they think that, well, we'll just put the taxes upon those rich people over there to pay for it, because we're looking at a welfare reform bill that was going to only save 5 billion quid anyway, which doesn't touch the size. It was going to go up by billions, but just not go up by quite as much. Another 2.5 billion of that has been cut. This is small change in terms of government expenditure. This is unaffordable where we are currently in terms of our government finances, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's completely unaffordable. And of course, they will now be down by 3 billion, even on their original forecast, which means in the autumn statement, de minimis, she will have to raise taxes by 3 billion, which means, yet again, people who are actually in work will bear the brunt of the failure on this. And it shouldn't be like this. We published a paper about this saying, if you targeted those groups... Now, there's one positive bit to come through. When I brought UC in, tax credits were outside and sickness benefit was outside, and I couldn't persuade the government at that stage to pay the money to get them in. But they're now coming in, certainly sickness benefit. This will make a huge difference to claimants, because they will be seen by somebody for the first time whose purpose in life is to get them into work. Right. And that's the big difference from languishing on a benefit nobody ever sees you on.
And that's the thing, people haven't been assessed. Since 2020, basically, if you have any check at all, it's a phone call or a Zoom, no one meets you in person. Reassessments are only maximum, I mean, the minimum time you're going to wait is 3 years. So people are just people are languishing for years, and then by then you're just settled into that life, aren't you? And of course, people know the system. You can look on TikTok and see what words you have to say to get these benefits.
That's the other bit,
How do we change all of that, though?
Well, as I said, they're coming on now to universal credit, which means everybody gets to see an individual regularly who will look at their condition, see what they can do, and help them try to get into work. Because all the medical profession will tell you, work is a health treatment for people with depression and anxiety. If you're at home, it gets worse. If you go to work, there's a chance you make friends, you change your life. All of that helps your mental state.
Routine, structure, purpose, self-respect.
All of that. Work is critical. But the second thing, I just want to say one thing, because you just raised this. One of the big problems we face now, which really started back around about 2012, really, I suppose, was the massive increase now in the use of social media when you get into the whole position about how people communicate. And on social media, you can find literally any condition will meet you in your state right now that you'll be able to claim is your condition. And people play kind of condition bingo quite often, you know, where they talk about, well, actually, I'm suffering from this, that, the other, and that. And somebody says, well, no, I've got something else as well. There's a sort of genuine sense that somehow you have to have a term for how you feel. I'm not denigrating those who genuinely have serious problems. That's a different matter altogether. I'm talking about the culture that has come about, that everybody talks about their feelings and how bad they are.
And gets a label.
There tends to be a spiral coming down where everybody reaches a common denominator of saying that life's impossible. What we have to do is shift that mental attitude and try and get people to understand you can change your life.
Absolutely. Genuinely, the medicalising of normal human emotion I find absolutely terrifying. I really do. But look, in terms of these Labour rebels, they all think they're the nice people. I didn't come into politics to vote for benefit cuts. They say they're worried that even the benefit concessions they've won from Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, they're saying that will create a two-tier system because the new people be affected by it, but not the existing people, which is utterly bizarre, since that's a result of them demanding that concession. But what do you make in terms of politically, as someone who's been at the top end of politics, what do you make of politically the damage to Keir Starmer, to his authority, the fact this is another major U-turn, Winterfuel, the rape gangs public inquiry, now disability benefits, and he still can't be guaranteed he's going to get this through without a major rebellion when he's got a working majority of 156 MPs?
And you're only a year into the government, which is the other critical issue. So there are 5 U-turns. Now, I think the public doesn't mind people U-turning in politics. We make a big issue about it, providing what they're U-turning to is the right way of doing something. But if it becomes a habit, then they begin to wonder whether or not you have any idea where you were meant to be going in the first place. So the odd U-turn, changing a policy, recognising something doesn't work. But to have come in and have 5 significant U-turns since he's arrived really won't help him at all. And this rebellion, really, you never bright morning ever again for a leader who suffers a massive revolt like this. Yeah. Because people get licensed to revolt on everything at that point.
Absolutely.
And it gets very, very difficult to manage your party. So that's what's facing them down the road, I'm
certainly
afraid.
See his authority withering away, can't we? Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I'm going to get Tom Slater's views on this, but just breaking news for you. 3 members of senior leadership team at the hospital where Lucy Letby used to work, this is the Countess of Chester Hospital, 3 members have been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. This after, of course, remember, Lucy Letby found guilty of murdering 7 children, attempting to murder 7 others between 2015 and 2016 in the neonatal unit. But 3 have been bailed pending further inquiries. They have not been named, but 3 have been arrested on gross negligence manslaughter. We'll bring you some more on that straight after the latest headlines. Going to be taking more of your calls as well. Certainly want to get Ashley. I didn't get to this hour. Do get to him very, very soon. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, your connected device, it is great to have your company. Lots of calls coming as well, talking about Keir Starmer facing his biggest rebellion of his premiership. Dozens of Labour backbenchers still saying they're going to rebel in a vote later this evening on his flagship welfare bill. It's about him giving massive concessions that have already cost £2.5 billion to you and me. Also, it's Emerge the Taxpayers Alliance has done some research. Thousands of people with conditions such as alcoholism, obesity. Again, that's not a condition. I mean, you can do something about that. And even acne. There's like people with acne who've been given welfare payments to improve their mobility, including getting access to cars. What on earth is going on? Also, growing calls for BBC boss Tim Davie to quit after it was revealed that he was at Glastonbury on Saturday. That was the day when we had the BBC broadcast his live death chants against the IDF by the punk duo from the dark ghettos of Ipswich, Bob Villan. We're going to be talking more about that as well. Plenty more besides. But it gets back to the breaking news we had just before the news, and you heard it in the news headlines as well, that 3 members of the senior leadership team at the hospital where Lucy Letby, serial killer nurse, of course, used to work, have been arrested. They were in leadership roles at the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2015 and 2016. They've not been named. They have been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. They've been bailed pending further inquiries. As I say, they've not been named. Now, 2015-2016 is the period of time when Lucy Letby was working in the neonatal unit at the Chester Hospital. She was later found guilty of murdering 7 children and attempting to murder 7 more during that time. Lots and lots of talk right now about whether or not she was wrongly convicted and whether or not there'd actually been massive problems in this neonatal unit that weren't down to her. This is in relation to the idea that, well, she wasn't responsible for those deaths. They were. The key thing here is Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes. He's the Senior Investigating Officer for Operation Duet, which has been looking into this since October 23. He says, following the lengthy trial and conviction of Lucy Letby, Chester Constabulary launched an investigation into corporate manslaughter at the Countess of Chester Hospital. This focuses on senior leadership and their decision-making to determine whether any criminality has taken place concerning the response to the increased levels of fatalities. In March this year, it was widened to also include gross negligence manslaughter, which is a separate offence, basically the inaction and failures by individuals. And he pointed out it is important to note this does not impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby for multiple offences of murder and attempted murder. Tom Slater is the editor of Spiked Online, who is joining me in the studio. Very interesting development here. My initial thought, I think a lot of people's would be, oh, hold on a second, if you're arresting hospital leaders, hospital bosses for nurse leadership teams, management of the unit, hospital chief execs, we know there's been lots and lots of criticism of them by, it all came out in the trial that senior consultants were going to hospital managers saying, we think that something's going on, or we think Lucy Letby may be responsible for these children dying, and there was total inaction. It would appear there's relation to that, not the idea that they were responsible for the deaths and Lucy Letby is exonerated, as some are, Peter Hitchens and others are claiming that she's innocent. She is a convicted serial killer after all. But 3 arrests on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter is incredibly serious.
Absolutely, and I think it is crystal clear what this is in relation to. As you say, there has been this kind of theory from people who are critical of the convictions of Lucy Letby, that the problem was essentially the hospital, that there was some kind of internal problem, that there were
there's clearly issues in terms of the neonatal unit, in terms of failures there.
Absolutely, but essentially explaining away the murders that Lucy Letby has been, in my view, rightly convicted for, by saying that there were kind of internal issues. There were some suggestions it might be the plumbing, there were some suggestions it might be general negligence, what have you. This is not in relation to that, as you say. It seems to be in relation, although we wait for more information, that to the fact that when doctors and various other clinicians tried to raise the alarm with the leadership of the Countess of Chester Hospital, they were the ones who rebuffed it. There was even that point in which the leadership of the hospital actually asked the doctors to apologise to Lucy Letby, which I think explodes the whole idea that you get from some of the pro-Letby side that this was all a kind of fit-up against Lucy Letby from the hospital itself. But as you say, very, very serious.
There are lots of conspiracy theories, and they're being pushed by, I mean, Peter Hitchens in the Mail, they're being pushed by, I mean, David Davis, a senior Tory MP, has been on board on this. The Daily Mail is pushing on this. I have to say, I mean, I'm perfectly happy for there to be an appeal process. We know that courts can get things wrong. We know that police can get things wrong. We know there have been many miscarriages of justice. I don't see where that is here, but I think there's a perfectly good argument for there to be an appeal process and to look at new evidence. I've got no issue with that. I don't think anyone should be afraid of that. I think, justice is a complicated and expensive and time-consuming business, but it's important to get it right. But I think there are some people who will never accept that she is a guilty woman and is a convicted serial killer of young babies. I mean, but this doesn't in any way imply Lucy Letby's innocence.
No, and they're making great efforts to explain that in this press release which has just come out.
Unusual, police being helpful and giving information, I know.
But I think it's because they've got to contend with, as is often the case with various different contentious cases, that they now have to almost manage the information sphere, because there's a lot of claims and counterclaims firing around.
And there's no doubt at all, whatever the cause, even if you go which way the three, abject failings by hospital management. We've seen this again and again and again when there have been deaths in hospital or when there has been someone who has been taking lives. Abject failures. Any uptick whatsoever in deaths or injuries in any unit should instantly flag. Right, let's call someone, let's get to work. And there was clearly a very strong instinct, as there is in all of these institutions, to cover up the problem. Doesn't matter if any more babies die, because as long as our hospital doesn't look bad, we have got to get over that. And the best way of doing that would be, I'm afraid, people being charged, people being convicted for making the wrong decisions. I don't know the guilt and innocence of these people. We haven't had them named. I think anyone following those cases closely would have a good idea of who the three would be in terms of the people who were criticised during the trial. But there's no doubt at all that we need, in any case, whether it's the post office, whether it's in hospitals, whatever body it is, we've got to have people who are held Grenfell. People have to be held accountable.
And you would hope that the kind of moral desire to do the right thing, to stop a gross injustice from taking place, to not turn a blind eye
grooming
to
gangs,
serial murders. You would hope that people who are in positions of influence over our institutions will just go along with that anyway. But there's got to be consequences, because you've got Wes Streeting running around saying we need AI to avoid another Lucy Letby scandal. What you need is a culture within these places which is not so determined to defend the institution at all costs. And that can be corrosive.
Everyone I
whether it's a
know,
hospital
and I've got a lot of family members and other friends who worked in hospitals, and everyone knows, don't send your kid there, or don't. Word goes round. Everyone, not him, he's a terrible doctor or whatever. Seriously, everyone knows. That's got to be. People have to speak up. There has to be a duty of care to speak up. That's the crucial thing. Same with child abuse. Same with again. We say we'd like to think that people would do it. Well, we've been proven time and time again to be wrong, that people don't speak up, and if people do speak up, they are basically forced to shut up. Very interesting development there. We'll get you some more on that as it comes in. Let's go back to the welfare debate. We're going to be talking in the next few moments to Jake Wallace-Simons about what's happened at Glastonbury, and the BBC boss calls for him to go. So we'll leave that for right now, but we'll take more of your calls on it. But this vote against the welfare bill today by a load of Rebel MPs, we don't know how many are going to vote against, how many might abstain. Could be 40, could be 50. There's a whole bunch of, not just the usual suspects, the committee chairs and others who kind of orchestrated this 126, signed by the Rebels amendment, which would have basically killed off this welfare bill. They've been brought on side by these major concessions. But the MPs who have voted for this, voting against this bill, they've all been out and about on the BBC. Can't get one of them to appear on here where they might actually be questioned and challenged, because, for some reason. But it's amazing. They think they're the good, nice people. I didn't go into politics to vote for welfare reform, welfare cuts and things welfare is good. And all the media coverage is welfare is good. people claiming disability benefits and any benefits of any sort are all in need of it. People voting for it, to keep it, are good. People voting against it are bad. So is it just about the money, is the question often. Well, yeah, because that money doesn't grow on trees. Other people have to go to work every day to earn that money, to pay for that. This is not just about those individuals who may lose their benefits, and not many of them by the looks of it, according to this. We can't afford it, a ballooning bill, there isn't the money, the economy is absolutely beeped. We're not seeing 2.5% growth, we're not paying for anything, we need to have these cuts. Eventually we're going to have virtually everybody on benefits, and apparently we're just going to get some random billionaire to pay all his taxes who's foolishly not going to leave the country to pay for it all. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer, this weekend he has the anniversary of his first day in office as Prime Minister. Within a year, massive load of U-turns, massive loss of authority. He can't even push through some really low rent, small scale benefit reforms because he's got no authority. What does this tell us about where we are as a country, where we are as a government?
Well, it tells us that we're terribly led. Unfortunately, this isn't a unique issue for this government, but when you think about the scale of the problems that we're confronting, in the world, not only is there the question of spending, not only is there the question of debt, which is obviously sits around all of these discussions around the benefits reform, there's also the fact that we have a country in which increasingly more and more people have just been put out to pasture. Young people who are in the prime of their lives have been kind of conditioned by society and then incentivised by the benefit system to languish in a state of kind of phony mental ill health, to be perfectly frank.
Just sitting watching porn and playing computer games all day at home. That's going to be good for you.
And obviously there are people who, in the same way that you can have a physical disability that mean you cannot work, you need support to the utmost. The same can absolutely be true about mental health as well. We all know that that's not what's going on here in large part. Why has it ballooned so much so quickly?
Well, know that, I know that. I think our audience knows that. I think the government knows that. Why don't those backbench MPs know that?
I think because the thing about Labour MPs is that the reason they're so attached to welfare is because the Labour Party and the people within it think of it as basically a giant charity now. It's very kind of paternalistic. They're the sort of heirs to the sort of high society women who go into the East End and tell people how to clean themselves and give them food parcels. That's kind of what the modern Labour Party is. It's not the political wing of organised Labour. It's like the political wing of Oxfam or something. That's kind of how it operates. Isn't it?
Put everyone on the payroll. Everybody needs help.
And this is why they're kind of tin-eared to the horrendous social consequences of people who get trapped on the benefit system, or whole communities now which are being scarred by worklessness, is because of the fact that those MPs actually get something out of this, because they can feel like a good person, they can feel like they're looking after the most vulnerable.
And there's a lot of votes in it.
I'm sure that's part of the calculation as well, but I think so much of this is about their own view of themselves rather than actually doing good in the country. It's about looking good on television.
Well, a bit of tough love. Look, I've had various friends who've got the kids who've come back from uni and not got a job, and when I post uni, I struggled a bit, and I was doing odd jobs and things, but going to have to get focused. And it is a really difficult transition in life. All the kids who have left school and haven't got a decent qualification, actually a lot of people coming out of uni don't have a decent qualification these days, and a massive load of debt, and they can't afford to move out, and and there's a lot of sort of what can I do? And parents, and again, it's not just MPs, it's parents who take this attitude that I have to cosset them, and actually a little bit of tough love, a little bit of we're changing the looks in 2 months' time. I'm really sorry, you need to move out, go and rent and go and get a job. Whatever the job is, it's better than no job. And a little bit of tough love is actually, more loving than I'll carry on doing your laundry until you're 35. That's actually, but parents have been wrapping their kids in cotton wool, and now those kids are now they're teenagers or early 20s. Oh, what a surprise. These are the parents who go along, to universities and complain about their kids' degree. These are the parents who just get massively involved in everything and I need my kid has to have extra time for an exam, or my people who call up, on behalf of their kid to their employer or something like, what, are you kidding me? I mean, we would have been mortified if that happened. It would never have happened, my generation or your generation. But this is where we are, and this is part of, again, that paternalistic attitude that everybody is entitled somehow to this money. I think for a lot of these rebel Labour MPs, and again, what a surprise, Labour lefty MPs, don't vote for cuts to people on benefits of any sort, that we're actually looking, this is all a move towards this idea of this universal income, basic income, this idea that everybody is going to just be paid, with AI, we're probably not going to be so many jobs, everyone's just going to be paid not to work a basic amount of money. you know, this is not going to work out well.
And, you know, the key word in universal basic income is basic. It's crumbs from the table. This is the thing about the whole welfare system. This is why, you know, working class people in particular are really great against this whole agenda. It's because of the fact that it's not enough. It's why would you want your life to about pure subsistence on the, you know,
and no reward for doing the right thing and working hard, and that I think this
and
is
the
the
independence and the autonomy and all that stuff.
But that's where you got that paternalistic Labour MP view of people. Like, well, you poor you, as opposed to actually, and that's a very middle class attitude. Whereas, you know, certainly, you know, my family, you know, coming from working class backgrounds, no, you pull yourself up, you work hard, you get ahead. The idea that we don't have social mobility in this country is abject nonsense. Virtually all of my good friends came from working class homes, who have done really well, worked hard. It's hard work, but they've done it, and they were rewarded for the aspiration. We're basically telling people, nah, don't bother, don't bother. We'll you know.
It's not to say it's not hard, and it's not getting harder in some respects.
Yeah.
You know, that's absolutely true. But you don't solve that by creating a culture of
just stay where you are.
Absolutely.
That's what they're talking about. Look, by the way, I've got a brilliant documentary coming out on Friday, this Friday at 9 p.m. called 1 Year of Chaos. It airs on Talk this Friday, as I say. It marks 1 year since Labour's landslide election victory, and to commemorate the occasion, Talk has put together that 1 hour special looking back at Keir Starmer's first 12 months in Downing Street. All of the main presenters are giving their tuppence worth, including me. I was there on air at that 10 p.m. moment when we announced that result, and wow, what a night that was. Don't forget to get in touch. I want to hear from you, as dozens of Labour MPs are set to rebel tonight, still against the most extraordinary amount of concessions that have been made by Liz Kendall and Keir Starmer on disability benefits. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. Text on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Up next, going to talk to Jake Wallace-Simons all about what happened at Glastonbury and, well, should the BBC Director General's head roll? That's up next. This is Talk.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just a reminder of that breaking news, and we'll talk to a police officer about the significance of this. 3 members of Lucy Letby's hospital senior leadership team have been arrested by the police on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. They have been bailed. They've not been named, but they were working in 2015, 2016 in senior management roles at the Countess of Chester Hospital at the time when Lucy Letby was later found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 7 more over that period. More developments on that. We'll bring them to you first. Right now, let's talk about where we are with Glastonbury, Bob Villan, the kneecap, and indeed Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, after those extraordinary scenes at Glastonbury where we had chants for death to the IDF. Goodness knows more else from Bob Villan, a rap duo from the dark ghetto streets of Ipswich. But now we're looking at even heads rolling at the BBC. Let's talk to Jake Wallace-Simons. He's author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred, and what to do about it, and joins us now. Good morning to you.
Morning.
I have to say, I thought these scenes were utterly extraordinary at Glastonbury. We talked about it at great length yesterday. Now it's emerged that Tim Davie, the director of the BBC, was not only involved in some of the decision-making regarding the taking down the live stream of Bob Villan after these death chants and other things were said on stage by the singer of that duo, but that he was actually at Glastonbury on the day. Does it look likely he's going to lose his job?
Yeah, I mean, far be it from me to speculate on whether Tim Davie was stoned at the time, but it seems difficult to explain.
OK. I think we can definitely say that we are not saying that 100%. A lot of people are at Glastonbury, a lot of people aren't. In no way is anyone suggesting Director General of the BBC was under the influence of drugs. Can we please not do that?
That was a joke.
I know, but still, for legal reasons, Jake, don't get me in trouble.
I was just trying to make the point that the decision that he made, or the lack of decision, is totally inexplicable.
Yeah.
I mean, how can somebody like him, in his right mind, who's a very adept, leader of a massive organisation like the BBC, an institution like the BBC, fail to understand that having death chants performed at Glastonbury, then beamed into millions and millions of homes by the BBC, by a national broadcaster, legitimised and magnified and spread, could be okay in any planet, on any planet.
But even the decision, they made a decision after Keir Starmer had said about, talking about Kneecap, and one member of Kneecap, the Irish rap duo, that they was in court and being charged with an offence of under terrorism, although other charges not brought, despite some really rather blatant video footage of some extraordinary support for Hamas and Hezbollah. The decision not to stream that live and play that live, so they acknowledged that, but then they decided the support act, Bob Villan, that should be streamed live. That in itself was a poor decision, and the fact that there wasn't even a slight delay, which they could easily do, and then the decision to not, the first sign of death, beep, literally press the button, go to another live stream.
Exactly. I mean, if they'd have finished that sentence, death, with 2 Muslims or 2 gay people, I think they would have pressed the button pretty damn quick. But I mean, I rue the day that I heard the word kneecap, let alone the word Bob Villan. I wish I'd never heard those 2 words together. But yeah, I mean, the weird thing is that the BBC put all this time and effort into agonising about whether they were going to broadcast kneecap, and decided that they weren't. So they made, I guess, the right decision then. But it took them a lot of cerebral engagement. Their heart wasn't telling them, look, we just can't go there at all. Yeah. They had to think it through for a long.
We'll get in trouble. But this is the thing. That they should have been flagged up, and this idea that these weren't political people. I'm sorry, you're at that level at the BBC or making those decisions. Forget Tim Davie, everyone else down on serious 6-figure salaries. You are capable of making that decision.
Exactly,
and as you say, if it was a different group that were being targeted, and that's the key thing, because we need to stress this in terms of the idea. Look, people can hate the state of Israel. They can hate the Israeli government, they can hate the policies, they can dislike what's happening in Gaza, West Bank. They're perfectly entitled to those views and to voice those views. And I would encourage people, if they have those views, to voice those views. I'd rather know what people think. Some of those views are very, very legitimate, I would say, and they certainly shouldn't be criminalised. But when you talk about the IDF, death to the IDF, I don't think anyone on stage should be shouting death to anybody, whether they agree with them or not. But crucially also, the IDF, the Israeli Defence Force, is a conscripted force. So you're talking about, includes, 18, 19-year-olds, just, left school, who are fighting in that fighting force. You're talking basically about the death to, pretty much everyone in Israel at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what was going on in Bob Villan's head, if anything. But that chant, I mean, death, death to the IDF, it feels to me as if, people can't say death, death to the Jews. And so there are many other things you can say. Zionists. You can criticise Zionists in a way that you can't criticise Jews. You can criticise Netanyahu in a way you can't criticise Jews. You can criticise the Israeli government, and everyone nods sagely and says, oh, yes, they're terrible, they are genocidal. Yeah. But you can't say the same thing about Jews. So it often becomes code. And when this chant, death, death to the IDF, is becoming used widely, actually, by other activists as well now, not just Bob Villan, I think I fear that it's becoming a code for basically what people feel is death to the Jews, but they're not allowed to say it. And so they say death to the IDF, and they have plausible deniability. Oh, I was only talking about geopolitics. I was only talking about the combatants and soldiers and so on. And actually, what they really feel in their souls is something much darker.
Certainly from conversations I've had with people in real life and on social media, the word Zionist is now just used interchangeably. I've got messages people about the Zionist Israeli state. You're thinking, yeah, I mean, by definition, so I think we know they're using the word Zionist as replaced for Jewish. That's what they mean. But it was interesting when Bob Villan the singer, Bobby with a Y, Villan, as opposed to the drummer, Bobby with an IE, Villan, of Bob Villan. I know it's complicated. They've been dropped by the United Talent Agency and MDDN, basically said we don't want anything to do with you anymore. They're also facing police investigation. Whether or not the police will decide that this crosses the line into criminality, I mean, I think they largely make the wrong decisions a lot of the time, but I don't know how on earth Lucy Connolly could have been prosecuted and Bobby Villan wouldn't be. But he didn't just talk about death to the IDF. He said free, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea is a chant that clearly means from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean. By the way, most people chanting it don't realise that it does mean that. That means the wiping out of the state of Israel. But he also talked about how he used to work for a effing Zionist. And he went on, kept saying that. I mean, again, I don't think there was any question mark about his views on Israel, his views on Jewish people. The question is, though, should they be prosecuted? They've lost their visas for the United States. They say, we don't want you in our country if they're tall. So, oops, that didn't work out so well, did it? Is that, though, a form of censorship of freedom of speech? Should they be criminalised? Should he be criminalised for saying those words?
Well, personally, I feel that there's too much policing of free speech in this country, of offensive speech overall. You can't have, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. You can't have people like Lucy Connolly being banged up and yet men like Bob Villan free to call death to the IDF and receiving no implications whatsoever, no repercussions whatsoever. So if you're going to start policing free speech, which I don't think you should do it across the board fairly, without fear or favour. Yeah. But I do think that the broader point is that what's more worrying is not so much that he said it, but the fact that thousands of people chanted along with him. Yes. And let's not forget that it's not just his attitude towards Israelis and Jews, although that's bad enough, frankly. It's also his attitude towards us, towards the British state. He's said any number of horrendously offensive...
You want your country back, you effing can't have your country back.
Exactly. So
I mean, he's British.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a man who should have ever left his mother's garage, and yet he's on the stage at Glastonbury, chanting to thousands, and thousands are singing along with him and loving him up, and the BBC love it too. That's the thing. So I think, aside from the legality of it, it just says some very dark things about the moral fibre of our country right now. That
absolutely.
This is so popular.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, not really spotted. Now, I've mentioned on air yesterday, I had a conversation with a very senior figure at the BBC a week or so ago, where I said I believed that the BBC was institutionally racist against Jews, was anti-Semitic, and it was so ingrained now, not that individual people were individually hating Jews, it was so ingrained they didn't even see it. It was just embedded in everything that they did in terms of their coverage of Israel, their judgments, the way they cover the crimes and things. They just simply can't see it. This very senior figure at the BBC, very senior figure at the BBC, was absolutely outraged at this, absolutely outraged. We had quite a set to about this issue. I'm kind of the view that what happened at the weekend epitomised my point exactly, is that they didn't even realise, because it's so institutionally anti-Semitic, they didn't realise that these chants, this behaviour, this act was inappropriate to be broadcast on a national broadcaster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a fish not seeing the water because it swims in it. You know, it's everywhere. And, you know, I had a conversation with Tim Davie a while back, actually. I bumped into him and had a conversation about this. And his defences seem to be, I hope I'm not misrepresenting these, but they seem to be two main arguments. One is that we also get criticised from the Islamist side, from the Muslim side. So therefore, we're doing a pretty good job of being balanced. But the problem is that one side is right and the other side is wrong. So, you know, splitting the difference.
Well, no, it's not a question about it. It's like, is there evidence? The key thing is, I mean, again, it's not who's saying it. What evidence does one have for?
Yes, one side is evidence-based and
one is not. Do you think Tim Davie will go? Do you think this question about the Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy sounded jolly furious in the House of Commons last night? The fact that he was there at the scene, and loads of senior figures be there at the scene, no doubt paid for by us. If you weren't working, I hope I wasn't paying for your trip down there, Tim Davie. But do you think he will go, and do you think he should go?
Well, I think that, you know, put it this way, I think if you would exchange the word Israel and Jews for Muslims and transgender people and then rerun history from October the 7th until the present, he wouldn't be in a job today. In fact, he probably wouldn't have been in the job by the end of October 2023. I think that says everything that you need to know about whether he should be in his job right now or not.
Very interesting. Jake Wallace-Simons, author of Israelophobia. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, I mean, do you think he will go, Tim Davie, the director of the BBC? Do you think he should go? Should it? He may have been at Clash, but let's face it, he's not the man pressing the button, sitting there. Someone's job it is, as a director, someone to say, cut that feed. Someone made a decision to at Glastonbury to put that band on. Someone made the decision at BBC to live stream it. Look, he's not taking those micro decisions. He's the Director General.
And it's one of those things where obviously the buck ultimately stops with him. I mean, if you look at some of the reporting around this, he's taken, if anything, a much more active role in editorial decisions than a Director General would usually be expected to do so. In a way,
that's an understanding that he doesn't trust the people he's got.
It's a sign of failure, and also it's the sort of thing where he's not necessarily the best equipped person to make those calls, as the call that was made on Saturday probably indicates. But I think even if heads do roll in this situation, we all know that's not going to change it. The problem is not necessarily Tim Davie ultimately, it's the fact that, as Jake was talking about there, some form of Israelophobia is the water that a lot of people, not just at the BBC, but in the liberal left media more broadly, swim in. They can't see it when even quite outright Jew hatred is staring them in the face, and that's something which needs to be tackled. If stronger leadership is required to tackle it, then so be it. But let's not pretend this is all coming down to one person making
exactly. But again, as Jake Wallace-Simons points out, that there is this point. If you say it's not very different, if it was about trans people, if it was about Muslims or black people, any of these statements, they would instantly go no. We've had, look, could you see, people have had, 6 cops turn up at their door because of a tweet they've written that, trans women aren't women, and refusing to use the incorrect preferred pronouns for somebody because that's such an offence. But they don't think it's an issue for someone to talk about effing Zionists. And again, I do think, Jake is right, I do think people now criticise Israel, Zionism, and it is basically code for Jew. That's what it is. It's code for Jew.
And it's been this way a long time before October the 7th as well. Anyone who was paying attention knew that there was this bubbling anti-Semitism. The fact that Jews, even before October the 7th, made up a tiny proportion of the population, less than 1%, and a quarter of all religiously motivated hate crimes. The fact that if you looked, you would see stories all the time about Jewish cemeteries being desecrated, swastikas being put on gravestones. This is something that's been going on in the background for a very long time. What's happened post-October the 7th is it's burst out into the front, even at Glastonbury.
And we've imported a lot of it because, sorry to break it to you on the left, but an awful lot of people who come from the Muslim Arab world are incredibly anti-Semitic. It is absolutely rife across large swathes of the world. We've imported a lot of it, and then we've seen the allyship between the sort of Muslim people, largely brown people in this country, victims by the left, and therefore globalists. US supported Israel, bad. I mean, there's just been this idea somehow, this meeting of the far left and blatant, Islamist-led Jewish, anti-Semitism. They've come together. I mean, seamlessly. And we've been watching it happen. And again, Jeremy Corbyn, thanks, mate. You know, one of the reasons why he's not Prime Minister of this country is because of those horrific views that he was perpetrating and his supporters.
The so-called anti-racist. This is the most
so-called anti-racist,
extreme, violent upsurge of racism, certainly in my lifetime, probably in many people's lifetimes. And yet they've been not only nowhere to be seen, they've been making excuses for it or engaging in it.
Engaging in it, mostly, yeah. 11:37 is the time. I'm horribly late. I've got to get to my next guest. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to talk to a Labour councillor who is one of those councillors on Teesside who's basically fought against these welfare reforms. But what welfare reforms should we have, if any, to actually cut taxpayers' bill? We'll talk to him up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 11:40 is the time. Let's talk more about those welfare reforms and those Labour rebels. We saw 126 were going to vote against the bill coming to the Parliament for a vote about around 7 o'clock tonight. We're now down to about 40 or 50 who will either vote against or abstain, despite a massive climb down by the Prime Minister and the Liz Kendall, Work and Pensions Secretary. But let's talk now to one of the councillors, 70 Labour councillors in Teesside. Very, very likely to be hard hit by welfare reform changes. A huge number of people on welfare there. They signed an open letter to the Work and Pensions Secretary urging Liz Kendall to rethink the changes and make even more changes than she's made already. Well, let's talk to Councillor Barry Woodhouse, who is a Labour councillor in Stockton-on-Tees. I say one of those signatories. A very good morning to you, Barry.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry to keep you waiting a little bit while we were having a little bit of a talk about Glasgow there, but the other obviously bigger story today is the welfare reforms. Why did you sign that letter and what did you think was wrong with the original proposals?
First of all, I'd like to say that I totally agree with welfare reform. The problems that I had and still have are that there was insufficient consultation with the disability groups. The employment support, return to employment support isn't in place yet.
Oh, hello. We lost you for a moment. You seem to have disappeared. Hello, can you hear me? Barry, can you hear me? Oh, goodness me. The line suddenly disappeared there. Just while we try and get him back up again, it's interesting, Tom Slater, this idea that not enough consultation with disability groups. I'm going to guess that, yes, disability groups will know more about what people's needs are, but there's also an element where disability groups are probably, going out on a limb here, going to be opposed to any changes that would cut any of the benefits.
I think that may well be the case. I think this is one of the problems, is that when you have such a thorny issue like this, the case for reform becomes very difficult, because a lot of the people who shout loudest about it or who work most in this area are not necessarily going to be of a view that actually, if anything, the benefit system is too bloated, is too liberal in one area. That's never what you tend to hear.
I think we've got Barry Woodhouse back. Barry, are you there now?
Yes, I apologise.
Who knows what's happened with the technical glitches we've got? So you said there wasn't enough consultation with disability groups.
Yes, and I can only go off what fellow councillors and fellow MPs and various disability groups that I'm in contact with, particularly one or two mental health groups and places like the Autism Society, and I just have so much more input and just haven't, in my opinion, been consulted enough. The legislation is desperately needed. I think it's a great...
Oh, goodness me. Is it frozen? Okay, well, we're going to persevere on the off chance it unfreezes. What is going on? Is this heat-related tech issues, do you think? But he's completely frozen on the screen. I can see right now. We're going to try and get him back. This is the issue, because I think we've got him back. Is that right? No, we haven't got it back. Apologies. Right. This is a problem. A lot of people say, and Labour MPs and Labour councillors, they say the same thing. They say, fully in favour, there needs to be reform, just not this reform. Everybody is constantly opposed to this reform, whatever this reform is. But the reality is, we need absolutely massive, wide-scale reform. And disability groups representing people who are genuinely disabled and genuinely need help, obviously they're going to represent these people. But the point is, we know, because statistically it's not possible that this huge extra number of people are genuinely disabled. They might think they are, but they're not actually unable to work. They're not actually in need of these benefits. And by the way, personal independence payments, PIP, supposed to be an in-work benefit, but it never is an in-work benefit, really. Well, only 1 in 8 people who are actually claiming that benefit are in work, which tells you that, that something very different is going on. Should we try and get a call up instead, actually, in this section before we can? I don't think we're going to get Barry. This is very frustrating, because very difficult to get a Labour MP on to discuss any of this, because all these Labour MPs...
It's funny, that, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you'd think they'd be on to justify, but of course, when they're questioned about this on the BBC, they're sort of, and why are you voting? Well, I'm voting against this because this is going to hurt disabled people.
Because I'm a good person.
Yeah, I'm a good person. But no one says, well, what about the people who are also disabled, who are working, who are trying to get their lives together? And are you doing a good thing by putting everyone on the sodding payroll? Let's go to Lawrence, who's on the line. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lawrence, thank you for calling. What do you want to say? Oh, don't tell me. Lawrence, are you there, my love? Come on. Tell you what, right, I'm going to give up. Right. Have we got him? Lawrence? No? Right. Yes, we've got you. What's going on? Are you on mute or something?
It was on mute, sorry.
Lawrence, slap hand. Exactly. No, I'll let you off. Lawrence, you're in bushy. Lawrence, what do you want to say about this?
So we've spoken before.
Yeah.
My wife had a double brain aneurysm 5.5 years ago, which has left her with no memory, very bad fatigue, etc. She can't do anything without being told what to do.
Yeah.
But if you look at her, you would never know.
No, but hold on a minute. We're not lining people up and going, you look able-bodied, you look...
No.
Of course she needs help.
What you're saying. Of course she does. But what I'm saying to you is, unfortunately, during COVID, people used to turn around and say, but you don't look disabled.
Well, then they're idiots.
We still get it. When we get out of a car or she's going somewhere, they say, well, why are you doing this? And I think what we've got to do is educate people when we're doing this, to the ones that don't need it, to the ones that do, and that not every disability is a visible disability.
If somebody is challenging you and your wife getting out of presumably a car parked in a disabled spot, then they're trying to think of a word I can say on air. They're beeps. They're idiots. Okay. Look. But the trouble is, we also know there are lots of people who are using those and abusing those. What we need is to stop the people who are abusing it. I don't need someone... I'm not expecting someone to be crawling along the ground to say, oh, they need PIP. People could have a severe
Julia.
disability and need it, but that's not the point. This is the thing. Whenever we have a conversation about we need to cut welfare, we need to get people off welfare, particularly on the mental health issue, people will then cite a whole load of people they know. In your case, obviously, it's your immediate family, your wife, and who do need it. But we're not talking about those people.
No, Julia, I don't disagree with you. But what I'm saying to you is, the people that actually deal with these forms, that fill them in when you go and speak to them, are not trained to actually know people's disabilities.
Don't you have consultant statements saying she has this condition, X, Y, Z?
Yes, but that doesn't make any difference. I mean, when my wife first was had, they actually sent somebody to the hospital to check whether she was in a coma because they didn't believe the consultant's letter.
I'm telling you, that seems appalling, and yet probably one of the reasons they didn't believe it was because there are so many people who lie.
I don't disagree with you, but what I'm saying to you is, when they come out, they should come and see somebody.
Yep.
They should go and visit them. They should take into account all the doctors' and consultants' letters.
I think it should be a medical person making the assessment, personally.
Correct. Not somebody who crosses the I's and crosses the T's.
Yeah, oh no, I completely agree with you. That said, the massive growth in benefit claimants for PIP and for mental health issues in the last few years suggests there isn't an issue with people getting on it at all.
No, and to be honest with you, as a full-time carer, 24/7, right, and I can go to doctor, I got stress, I've got this. Do you think I should be getting PIP? That's ridiculous. When I was growing up, I had my parents turn around and said to me, suck it up and see. If you get a cold, you go to work.
Yeah.
You won't go to work unless you're dying.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much, I'm a doctor's daughter. Imagine, we were never allowed a day off school, but there we are. Lawrence, I'm so glad we got you on the line. Really, really appreciate that. We're going to get to more of your calls. Lots of them on the board. Love to hear all your thoughts. Get in touch, 0344 499 1000. We'll get to them straight after. And if Councillor Barry Woodhouse can get back on the line, we'd love to talk to you, mate. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel.
Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall. It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:52 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Dozens of rebel Labour MPs are still expected to vote against Keir Starmer's welfare reforms tonight. Vote around 7 o'clock, despite a major climb down, yet another major U-turn from Keir Starmer on those disability benefits. Basically, the rebels are now complaining about there's going to be a two-tier system because the government has caved in and said it won't affect anyone who's already claiming universal credit and personal independence payments. It'll only affect people who are claiming from November 2026. They're not even going to instigate this for 18 months, but they're only going to lose £2.5 billion of the extra cost that it's going to cost for all the ballooning costs of an extra 1,000 people a day coming on. But now they're complaining, but now it's going to be two-tier because people are going to be on different eligibility claims. I mean, these people cannot win. Well, we'll not ever allow the government to win, but massive impact on the Prime Minister's authority, massive impact on your and my taxpayers' purses. Let's talk about this with Gary, who's on the line now in Southampton, and he wants to talk about this. Good morning to you, Gary.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. What do you want to say?
Well, great show. But I've calmed down a little bit now. But about an hour ago, one of your headlines was acne, alcoholism, and obesity.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so incensed when I saw that. I mean,
did you need a drink?
Yeah. I'm just going to make myself a bacon sandwich, actually.
Bring one round.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I know someone very, very close to me who is on PIP and doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, and been on it for like 20-odd years.
What, do you mind saying what for?
It's for fibromyalgia, and there are several associated problems.
Yeah,
with
I mean, people can be really incapacitated, in quite a lot of pain, and unable. I've had relatives with that, literally unable to walk even a few yards. So
absolutely, and some of her fits that she used to have, she's not as bad now.
Yeah,
but some of her fits, I mean, her legs would be bouncing off the floor.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
but this is the thing. But there's a difference. That's that's an affliction someone's got. We should be helping people in need like that. Absolutely. Yeah. But then if you're overweight, you can't work because you're overweight. The solution to that is for you not to be overweight. I would have thought a really good, quick solution to that would be you not having enough money to buy a load of takeaways and fizzy drinks, and so you lose weight.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I don't do takeaways at all, but I am overweight.
You're not claiming benefits for it. You're entitled to weigh whatever you sodding well want, as long as you're not asking me to pay for it. My weight's not your business. Your weight's not my business. Can everyone leave everyone alone?
Yeah. Well, I retired about 3 months ago, and if anyone thinks that stepping down is an easy way forward, it's not.
Yeah.
Because when Ian Duncan Smith was on earlier, he said something which is so true.
Yeah.
Work is good for you.
Yeah.
And you know, when you step down, I mean, I've got a sciatica in one leg. I can barely walk 50 yards without. You know, it's just, and that is, I mean, 6 months ago I was on a roof.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, aging's not a good thing, but again, it is interesting actually how often people can go downhill when they're off work, and again, particularly with mental health issues. I really appreciate your call, Gary. Thank you very much. Enjoy that bacon sandwich. I'm so hungry now. Tom said, but that is a fair point, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And I think that point that we heard there, but also we heard earlier from Ian Duncan Smith about the importance of work, is particularly important from a mental health perspective as well, because of the fact that even if we don't want to call it mental health, I feel like even that term kind of clouds things. If people are feeling that
bit down,
they can't kind of get out of bed in the morning, they feel like there's not a lot of prospects for them, then essentially doubling down, keeping them in the house,
telling them they're a victim, giving them a label.
It's the worst possible thing you could do.
That's Monday morning?
What's so maddening about it.
Most people in this country had a bad night's sleep on Sunday night, right? We had, the weather. I mean, let's face it, might have had a few drinks on Sunday as well, enjoying it. And then you can't get to sleep. You're feeling a bit rotten Monday morning. Who was leaping out of bed on Monday morning? Oh, I cannot wait to get to work. I mean, okay, I had an aircon studio to get to, so there was a little bit of incentive. But you said, you're feeling a bit down on Monday morning. Yeah. That's not a mental health condition. That's life. Yeah. That's life. Sorry you didn't marry better. That's my response.
We've just turned the ups and downs of life into mental illnesses, essentially. And it's something which you see it most pronounced in the younger generation, but not exclusively either. I think this kind of learned helplessness, which is pushed on people, very much from the top down, very much from our culture, is really starting to have a terrible impact.
Absolutely. Let's see if we can squeeze another call in. Ashley, he's on the line in London. Ashley, you wanted to talk about Glastonbury and the death to the IDF chants. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
I had a couple of points, really. I mean, from a Jewish person's point of view, and someone who I consider, I don't agree with everything that Israel does and the West Bank and all the rest of it.
Yeah, why would you? I'm sure lots of people in Israel don't.
But I am a Zionist in respect to people don't understand the word Zionist, being that I believe the Jews do have a right to self-rule, and people have demonised it. Now, this chap, put aside the chant of death, death to the IDF, the part that concerns me the most, for me as a Jewish person, things that have happened on the internet since he's done that, is that my boss is a Zionist, so if we put it into order, my boss is a Zionist, death, death to the IDF, right, and then straight into free Palestine, it will be free, right, inshallah. And so what he's saying is, and he's come out with a statement saying, "Oh, it's not about the Israeli people," right? And you say, "Right, okay, well, let's look at this realistically, right? You want to kill the army that protects them, and then you want to free Palestine. In other words, push out every Israeli, every Jew, probably every Muslim Israeli that's there.
20% of the population.
Exactly. Ethnically cleanse it, but it's not about you. Don't worry, my friend. And it's either complete and utter ignorance, which I think sometimes with these people it's about effect. I mean, but it's the incitement. Now, the point I wanted to get to is that since he's done this, the comments, it's not just on this point, but the comments about us Jews on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the people that said never again are now the people that are doing the
genocide in Gaza.
Jews, right? And people, and I know, look, people are entitled to walk around with Palestinian football tops on, but all the ones around my way have got, for instance, they've got the Palestinian football kit on with the number 11, but the number 11 is actually Israel. Yeah. So it's Palestine, and the 11, if you imagine the shape of Israel, is on the back
I see, right,
the
yes.
11,
That's
right?
what, yes.
So they walk around with that. And the whole point is what I want to make, no one ever defines what these people mean about...
Well, when they say globalise the intifada, like the new Democrat nominee for New York mayor, globalise the intifada, what, you mean bombing civilians on buses then?
Absolutely, but it's also the point of all these people coming out saying free Palestine. What do they mean? I know what they mean, and that they just don't want.
They mean the annihilation of the state of Israel. And again, I don't know why everyone's got a right to a nation state apart from Jewish people. It does seem to be utterly bizarre. And again, given what's been happening at Glastonbury in London and elsewhere in recent years, I can see why an awful lot of people feel the need to know that there is a safe haven if things get as bad as it did in the 1930s, and I can understand why people feel that way. Thank you so much for your call, Ashley. Lots more calls coming up on welfare, on Glastonbury, you name it. We're going to get the latest on the Lucy Letby arrest as well. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Goodness me, an awful lot of things going on today. And whether you are listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, you're connected to us. It's great to have you join us. Don't forget, by the way, if you miss anything in the last couple of hours or miss any of the show ever, you can go to my YouTube page. It's cunningly called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It's easy to find on YouTube. Hit subscribe and you will never miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, I'm going to talk more about welfare reforms. Going to talk to the Reform UK MP, Sarah Poachin. We're also going to be talking about the latest immigration crackdown on those illegal delivery riders who are being exposed by the Sun newspaper. And we're going to be talking about Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, who wants to carpet an area the size of the West Midlands in solar panels by 2030 as part of Labour's push for net zero. Brilliant. I'm sure that will work out very, very well. Tom Slater is joining me right now. He's the editor of Spiked Online. Thank you once again for joining us. I'd love to get your response to what our next guest has to say, because I want to talk right now, just before we get to Sarah Poachin, who's waiting on the line, about these revelations in the last hour by police who've been investigating events at the Countess of Chester Hospital. You'll remember, of course, this is where we did see the multiple deaths of young babies and the conviction of nurse Lucy Letby in that baby unit. She was convicted of murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of 7 other babies while she was working at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. New development today: 3 members of the senior leadership team at the hospital where she worked at that time have now been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter. They have not been named. But let's talk about this with former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville, who joins us to explain this particular story. Very good afternoon to you, Mike.
Good afternoon, Julia.
A very interesting development here. Now, just explain there, because this investigation has been sort of quite separate to the investigation that was into Lucy Letby and the crimes that she is convicted, and many people querying her guilt or innocence, but she was convicted in a court of law by, in fact, 2 different trials by 2 different juries of these crimes. But this is a separate investigation. Explain what it's all about.
Well, this amounts to, with gross negligence manslaughter, is that they didn't show enough care. You know, the care given to those children was so bad by those individuals who had a duty to do that they can be prosecuted for potentially causing their deaths. And at the same time, you have a corporate manslaughter investigation, which has been running for about 18 months into the same hospital. And so you've got those 2 parallel investigations going on where other people could be found responsible for the deaths of the children.
Now, there's been a massive big campaign to free Lucy Letby, for have her an appeal, to argue that she has been the victim of a terrible miscarriage of justice, and actually there were problems at this neonatal unit. They're nothing to do with her. She's been convicted on circumstantial evidence. She's not a guilty woman. But the detective, now Superintendent Paul Hughes, who's the senior investigating officer of this Operation Jewett, he made it very clear. He said, "It is important to note this does not impact on the convictions of Lucy Letby for multiple offences of murder and attempted murder." Can you explain why he said that and what that implication of that is?
Well, I think he's emphasising that the convictions still stand, and he probably knows a lot more about this case than I do. But one of my take on this is that this will just increase the shouts for an appeal here, because Lucy Letby applied to the Criminal Case Review Commission and was refused. And since that time, one of the key prosecution witnesses, Dr. Evans, has gone back on his story and basically said, "I now believe that she's not responsible for the deaths." And we had a Canadian paediatrician expert and a panel of about 14 absolutely eminent paediatricians from across the world saying, "We don't believe that she's guilty of these crimes." So I think
They're saying some circumstantial evidence. There's quite a few things. There's been some changing of some of the evidence presented appears to sort of been contradicted by internal emails. But a lot of the criticism that came out during this very long trial and in the subsequent reports has been of the management. So we had, you know, the consultants in the unit who were concerned. They believed that Lucy Letby was responsible for these babies' deaths. That they when they went to management with concerns, they were just told, no, nothing, no, sod off. And then at one point, even forced to write a letter of apology to Lucy Letby. The fact that there was this heightened, massive increase in the number of babies that were dying in this unit, from whatever cause, there was no investigation into that. There was no effort to tackle it and no effort to sort of deal with this issue. That's more what this is in relation to. So it doesn't actually have a bearing on her guilt or innocence. Those are completely separate issues. It's their failure to take action when clearly babies were dying or almost dying and they failed to act.
Absolutely. This is the current investigation. It will look at, as I say, the duty of care given by those three senior managers, which seems to have been, the management of that unit seems to be absolutely appalling. But it can only, as I suggest, increase the clamour that Lucy Letby is given an appeal. I think the two things will always be, or the three things, if you look at the corporate manslaughter investigation, the three things will always be intrinsically linked together.
But again, and they are linked in the sense of whatever, again, there's a court of law, a jury, made those decisions, but two juries indeed, one of the baby's cases. But actually, at the end of the day, the problem we've got is institutional failure a lot of the time, a failure of management, and we've seen this again and again in every area of life, not just in neonatal unit, the NHS, where institutions, senior figures, and Frank, although these people haven't been named, following the trial as I did, I could probably guess who the three people were, and a lot of people could, is that actually this urge to cover things up, to protect the reputation of an organisation and an institution, to not make them look bad, that seems to be the number one priority every time, over the safety of newborn babies or children being groomed by gangs or anything else.
It's always shocking, isn't it? Throughout the public sector, things seem to have just completely lost their focus. Yep. The NHS should be there to look after us, to care for us. The police should be there to catch criminals and make sure we're safe. The passport office should be there to issue passports or whatever. Yeah. But all through these organisations, you have these terrible failings. And of course, the worst thing when you get to things like the NHS and the police is that they're dealing with people's lives. And it's these wicked failings, they end up in, we've had 7 babies died. There are 7 babies who nearly died, and managers whose focus was not on those babies' lives, was not on those babies' care, it was elsewhere, and it's truly shocking.
Absolutely.
And let's hope this investigation tells us the truth of what's been going on at that hospital.
Well, indeed. Mike Neville, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector, thank you very much. Brief response from Tom Slater, editor of Spike Online, listening to that.
I just think it's worth saying that these babies didn't die, they were murdered. And this is as a result of a long-running court case in which there was plenty of evidence. And just very quickly on that point about the expert Dr. Dowie Evans, who was so crucial to the conviction of Lucy Letby. The claim that he has changed his mind about the deaths of certain babies is something he's very firmly pushed back upon. That's a claim that is being made on the behalf of Lucy Letby's appeal, but it's one that he quite firmly rejects. So it's a reminder, isn't it, that this debate is going to run and run.
Oh, it is. Thank you very much. More from Tom Slater. Right now, delighted to welcome, waiting on line, very much appreciate you waiting, Sarah Pogin, former UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Well, thank you. I just wondered actually if you wanted to give a response, obviously, to those arrests and those charges. We haven't got anyone named, but again, the concern, and we saw this. I know it's something that Reform have been talking a lot about in terms of the grooming gangs. You've got institutional failure, police, social work, and others. Just let's councillors don't make a fuss, keep everything quiet. Institutional failure, and we've had this again and again in whether there's been a failure of a useless surgeon or inadequate maternity care, or in this case a serial killer nurse working at this hospital. The failure of management, it would appear, to take action.
Yeah, once again, Julia, we're seeing what's supposed to be trusted institutions for members of the public, like a hospital here, the Countess of Chester, and clearly there's been gross misconduct by someone, and I would imagine plenty in management that knew what was going on. And it's another classic example, I'm sure, where whistleblowers were too afraid to come forward. And there needs to be a thorough investigation. Yes, we have Lucy Letby convicted and in prison. I know that there's a campaign about that, but the fact is, I'm not here to comment on that.
Of course.
But clearly there's a whole bigger picture here of who knew what, who allowed what to happen. But at the end of the day, the hospitals are places where the public should be able to go, feel safe, and feel that they will be looked after and their babies looked after in this case. Absolutely tragic set of circumstances. But what this will do, Julia, is increase the speculation amongst the public of whether or not Lucy Letby is guilty of the charges she's been found guilty of. And of course, as soon as you get increased speculation with the public, my view is that you have to have an investigation quickly, because it just increases the tension.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's move on to what we did invite you to talk about, and that, of course, is this welfare reform vote. The Keir Starmer's a massive climb down, major U-turn, big concessions to the Labour rebels, 126 of them. Got it down to, we think now, 40, 50, 60 maybe, who are saying they'll either vote against or abstain on the bill tonight. Means he'll still get the measures through, but with a working majority of 126 ostensibly, 156, that's pretty poor in the first year in office for this new Prime Minister. How is Reform going to vote?
Reform will vote against this bill this afternoon because we think in so many ways it's ill thought through. And I think the actions of the Prime Minister in recent days are really concerning, and members of the public are seeing a Prime Minister who is U-turning yet again. So in my short time here, this is the third U-turn, but U-turning on major government policy. And not only that, Julia, claiming that he was confused, he's been abroad, he's taken his eye off the ball. I know from my constituents in Runcorn and Helsby that when they come over into my office in tears because they're concerned about their disability benefits being cut and the effect and the impact it's going to have on their day-to-day lives, how serious this is. Well, the Prime Minister clearly hasn't taken it that seriously, because he by his own admission, has taken his eye off the ball. He's U-turning. But the worst thing about this U-turn, Julia, just to add, is I feel he's U-turning to get the vote through. He's not U-turning because he understands or has a strong conviction on the policy. Well, that's just a crisis situation.
He can't have a strong conviction if he's willing to U-turn, by definition. I don't understand why Reform are voting against this bill. I mean, we had a health and disability benefit bill, 40 billion quid in 2019. Since 2020, lockdown and, of course, people being assessed on Zoom and the mental health crisis apparently all of our young people think they're going through. They're not going through. They think they're going through. A £100 billion bill by 2030. An extra 1,000 people a day coming onto those benefits. It's now no longer going to affect anyone already claiming benefits. I think it should, but it's going to only affect people from November 2026. So literally 18 months' time is going to affect some people who are going on to a tiny level from then. That is the most tiny, bare minimum of welfare reform we could have possibly hoped for.
Precisely.
And you're not voting for it?
Precisely. Why would we vote for something that is...
But it's better than nothing. Because it's better than nothing.
No, it's half-baked, it's half thought through, and instead of having a cut-off of new claimants, what we need to do is assess properly the claimants going forward. That means face-to-face assessments, no more of this online stuff. How can you really tell what's going on with an individual unless you see them face to face? And also the waste and the abuse of this welfare system by people in this country, currently in this country, in terms of, I was only reading in the paper this morning examples of where people are getting disability benefits because they're suffering from acne, disability benefits, because they've got OCD. Well, that phrase is bandied around all the time at the moment. The point is we need to get back to proper assessments, because otherwise you don't just have a blanket cut-off point of new claimants or whatever.
It's not a cut-off. It's not a blanket cut-off point. It's about applying new rules in terms of your assessments for the points from November 2026 to make it tougher. That should be applied now, for goodness sake. Every single person should be reassessed now, so that people who need the benefits will get them. This is the problem. Every single MP says, we need to have reform. But don't take it away from anybody. We don't want to take it away from people who need it. But do you genuinely believe that 1,000 more people a day, every day in this country, need these benefits?
Exactly. So don't vote for a bill that leaves the situation situation as it is for all the people that are currently claiming benefits. That is not the way forward. The way forward is to go back, to reassess these people, and all the people that are taking advantage of the system need to be stopped.
Okay, so wait a minute. How come you think that, your party, and yet you're in favour of scrapping the two-child benefit cap?
Well, the two-child benefit cap is all about, that's a whole different subject, and that's all about supporting hardworking young couples who both want to go out to work.
No, it's not. No, it's got nothing to do with that. The two-child benefit cap is about people who've got more than two children who are on benefits being able to claim extra benefit, not child benefit, but then everyone gets regardless of, well, up to a very high income. But that's about basically saying when you're on benefits, you don't get extra payments because you've got 3, 4, 5 or 6 children. Why on earth are you scrapping that?
Our view is that if you have two people out at work, not claiming benefits, trying to hold two jobs down.
You just said they're out of work.
Family, hold on, a supportive family, then they should be entitled to claiming child benefit because they're at work.
No, Sarah, this is not about child benefit. The two-child benefit cap is not about child benefit. It's other benefits that you can get when you are out of work. When you're claiming universal credit and you're out of work, that you can get, and it's worth, I think it's, is there something like about 4 or 5 grand a year or something? That's not child benefit like that, you get because you have a child, which everyone gets. It's not. We're talking about a huge extra sum.
But also, Julia, it is about the additional benefits you can get when you are to top up your household income when you are trying to hold down a job and go out to work.
No, it's not. No, I'm sorry. I know Nigel's talked about this and he's got it wrong as well. No, it's not. You're wrong about that. This is a benefit for people who've chosen to have more children than they can afford to look after. If you have 3 children and you're on benefits, may I suggest you get off your backside and get a sodding job to look after your 3 children, because there are millions of hardworking families, Sarah, who can't afford to have a 3rd child. They can't even afford to have a 2nd child. Many couples can't afford to have a 1st child because they're paying taxes to pay for people who are not paying for their own kids.
Julia, I could not agree with you more.
You don't even understand the policy you support.
No, our policy is about supporting hard-working people.
How does paying more money to people who've got more than 2 children who are on benefits help hard-working families?
This policy, in my understanding of this policy, is that we
don't understand it, Sarah.
No, Julia, is that we will be paying this child benefit in the way that I always think of child benefit to people who are out of work.
It's not child benefit. It's a cap on all the benefits you can have once you have got more than 2 children. It's not child benefit. I mean this very respectfully. If you're going to be an elected MP and you're going to have a chance to vote on these things and be part of policy, you and your stablemates and every MP in Parliament really need to know what you're talking about.
I couldn't...
Because this is my money you're spending.
Julia, I absolutely agree with you. And all I can tell you at this stage is that the policy of reform is to support, hardworking people.
It's not hardworking.
And
it's not for hardworking people. It's for people who aren't working.
No, I agree. And in my view, if people are not working, I couldn't agree with you more.
So you agree with me that your policy is wrong?
I agree. What I'm telling you is that we will support hardworking people. If people are on benefits, I couldn't agree with you more that they should not get more.
You just said you support that policy.
Benefit.
You just said you support that policy.
Reform is all about supporting families, young families that want to do the right thing, pay their taxes, go out to work. We will make sure that our policies, when our time comes, and it will come, support that section of society, whether it's through increasing the tax threshold or whether it's through supporting them in other ways.
I'm genuinely, I mean this with all due respect, I really would like you to go away and read up on this policy, because it is not the policy you think it is. You are quite wrong about that, and that's the reason why the vast majority of not just voters but reform voters are opposed to scrapping that 2-child benefit cap. But look, let's move back on to where we are today. The government may probably get this reform through. There is another U-turn. We had the U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. We've had the U-turn on these diverse...
on the grooming gangs.
On the grooming gangs, the public inquiry. We're likely to get one on the 2-child benefit cap because he'd spoken in the past, Keir Starmer, that he would not scrap that. He probably will. His MPs are up there. Who knows? We might even have a U-turn on the inheritance tax rate on farmers from some of the MPs who are now representing rural areas who are worried about the reaction to that. Is this a Prime Minister who can push through any policy at all now, or has he lost all his authority even before a year in power?
I think the fact is the British people are looking at a Prime Minister who has lost control of his own policy. He's lost control of the finances of the country. And I'm sure before long, and possibly even by the end of today, he'll have lost control of his members of Parliament. So I would imagine that after a disastrous first year in office, and we're coming up to the first year, at the end of his first year, there are going to be some serious questions asked about who is setting policy and how this Prime Minister lacks conviction and, in fact, understanding of those policies. And let's face it, Julia, they are the party in government. So, yes, you can, quite rightly question me about whether I fully understand what our stance is on this, that and the other. But the fact is, we are not even the party of opposition, although, of course, we would say we are the party of real opposition.
The polls are saying you're going to be, at this rate, you'll be a cabinet minister in 4 years' time.
I hope so. But the point is that Keir Starmer is in government, his party is in government, and if they don't understand the policies, if they are U-turning, then that looks like a weak and ineffective government.
How weak and ineffective is the new leadership of Warwickshire County Council? The chief executive has been criticised by Zia Youssef, who used to be your party chairman, is now running a sort of doge, effectively, for acting like the monarch of Warwickshire after Monica Fogarty, refused to take down the pride flag flying outside their county hall. She says they have flown this flag for every Pride Month. I'd say it's July now. Pride Month is finally over. But she's been requested by the 18-year-old new leader of the authority, George Finch, one of the Reform councillors, to take the flag down basically in line with Reform's policy of only flying British-related flags, not pride flags. She's not going to take it down. What happens next?
Well, the fact is I was a councillor for 8 years and I fully understand how these councils work. At the end of the day, the council should be run by the elected members, the elected borough councillors or district councillors, whatever type of council it is, not the officers, which in this case, the lead officer is the chief executive. So the leader of the council has the final say on what flag is flown over those council buildings. That is a Reform council, and therefore our policy is that we fly the Union Jack, quite rightly, over our council buildings. That pride flag needs to come down. It's not Reform policy. That's exactly what we're doing. And I'm afraid, we only need people in charge of these very important positions that are going to stand up and be proud of this country and our Union Jack.
OK. Sarah Poachin, Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby, thank you for joining us. Tom Slater, do you want to talk about flags? Do you want to talk about welfare reform?
What do you want to talk about? That was a hell of a scrap in the middle there. Do your homework, kids.
I have to say, I don't think genuinely, I have the same issue with Nigel Farage on this. When people talk about two-child benefit cap, this is not about getting that money, that whatever it is now, 20, 25, I've got an 18-year-old, it's not an issue anymore. But we're talking about universal credit or child tax credit for extra child you get. It's an extra best part of $3,500 a year. Extra money that you get, and the two-child limit means you can't get anything extra for every extra child. It's nothing to do with child benefit. But we've got I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure there are an awful lot of Labour MPs and Tory MPs who don't get this too.
It's sort of
I find this scary. Google is your friend, people. It is your friend. You can look at House of Commons papers where they explain these things. But we've got. If everyone's best hope is, I'm tongue-tied. Everyone's best hope is like, the Reform would cut benefits, and they really feel strongly about this, get people back to work. And they want to pay people more money when they've chosen to have a third child, but they're not working. Sorry, you want to have 3 kids, you're going to both have to get a job.
But also,
tough.
And also, if that's going to be the policy, be across it. I think is not.
Yeah,
but unfair.
What do you think of
expect.
Reform? They're going to say they're going to vote against this bill because it doesn't go far enough. Shouldn't we vote for anything? Should we have any support from everyone saying for any measure, even if it's as limited as this is? $2.5 billion off the welfare bill, whether that happens or not, is better than $5 billion. Not as good as $5 billion, not as good as $30 billion, but it's a start.
I understand that. I suppose the other point is there's always going to be a bit of political game playing, wanting to inflict a defeat on the government. It's going to be quite a tempting situation, even if, as you say, it maybe gets them a little bit closer to where they'd want to be. But, you know, at the end of the day, they are just a handful of MPs, so maybe there's always going to be a bit more politics.
Well, I don't know, it depends how that vote goes tonight. Anyway, take a deep breath. I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you want to get in touch on welfare. Lots of people still calling it on Glastonbury. Very interesting, by the way. We had a statement from the Bob Villain punk band duo from the ghettos of Ipswich. I don't know why, that still makes me laugh. I'm going to read it out just after a break, and we'll get to your calls as well. So we'll take a quick break right now. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
The story is that he was approached and said, look, they've just shouted death, death to the IDF. And he said to carry on screening them, carry on live streaming them. So now not only are there calls for David to be sacked, but also that he too should be investigated for effectively encouraging blatant law breaking. He's done nothing but stagger from one hapless crisis to the next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. So just to bring you up to date, Bob Villain, the duo punk band of basically lost their management, lost their US tour because they can't get their US visas now after shouting death, death to the IDF and loads of other anti-Semitic things. They've issued a statement, not the first, not the last. Free Palestine is the big statement, but they're saying today a good many people would have you believe a punk band is the #1 threat to world peace, blah, blah, blah. We are being targeted for speaking up. We are not the first, we will not be the last. And if you care for the sanctity of human life and freedom of speech, we urge you to speak up too. Some terrible punctuation in that, by the way. He says, we are not for the death of Jews, Arabs or any other race or group of people. We're for the dismantling of a violent military machine. Obviously, they're referring to the Israeli Defence Force. We, like those in the spotlight before us, are not the story. We're a distraction from the story. Whatever sanctions we receive will be a distraction. The government doesn't want us to talk, want us to ask why they remain silent in the face of this atrocity, why they're not doing more to stop the killing, to feed the starving. The more time they talk about Bob Villan, the less time they spend answering for their criminal inaction. It's just, I mean, it's just the usual bleating stuff, isn't it, Tom Slater?
No, absolutely. It's all just deflection away from what they said, which was despicable.
The sentence, we know what their statement should have been, oops, we've messed up our whole career by trying to be cool with the Glasgow crowd. Oops.
And you could see with the relish in which they did that, first of all, that they were airing their own hatred, but also the fact that there was an element of the spotlight's on us. We're going to go viral.
Yeah.
This is our big moment.
And here I'm eating vegan ice cream on a dairy farm.
And imagine, you use your big moment to say something like death to the IDF, or to sound off about Zionists with such a venom that would make you think that maybe he means something else by that particular word. And it just comes down to the fact that no one is buying this anymore. I mean, apart from the subculture of Israelophobic
and everyone at the
idiots who
BBC.
have cropped up.
No, but that's the thing again. You can say, I'm really worried about the deaths in Gaza and we need to do something about it. I'm really worried about praise. There's loads of ways of saying it which don't involve saying death to anybody else. Stuart is on the line on 0344 499 1000, wants to have his say on what happened at Glastonbury. Good afternoon to you, Stuart. What do you want to say?
I'd just like to say it's a pity they can't find a tablet for stupid, but fix it.
You'd have to take a lot of them.
BBC, that clown, that Bob Villan or whatever, do you know what I mean? Seriously, he needs locking up for 20 years, that mum.
No, not for 20 years. Come on.
Well, hang on a minute. A message got Lucy Connolly locked up for 3.5 years. That is a lot worse than a message as far as I'm concerned.
31 months. Oh, yeah, I don't see on any grounds that she could have been prosecuted for her tweet if he's not going to be prosecuted for his charm.
The fact that he's going to get locked up, I should get locked up for 20 years. Do you know what I mean? But the thing is, when you consider both cases, do you know what I mean? That's what he should get. But, I mean, how stupid are these people? They're absolutely dim. I mean, if the IDF and the Jewish people were as bad as people said, they could have flattened Gaza in the first day.
This is the thing. This is the genocidal state of Israel that's useless at committing genocide, apparently. Absolutely. We've seen their competence in terms of taking on Iran, taking on Hezbollah, but apparently when it comes to Gaza, utterly incompetent at mass killing. And I'm being glib, and I'm not being glib about the death of civilians, because the death of civilians in any country is awful. But that's kind of the rationale, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not being glib about it. You know what I mean? You don't want kids getting hurt anywhere.
War is terrible. It's always terrible for everyone.
No consideration for human life as a terrorist. And guess what? Muslim terrorists are just that. Any terrorist, no matter whether they're Muslim or not.
Yeah.
But Hamas, people like that, are terrorists. That's all they are. The BBC needs shutting down.
You're quite angry about this, Stuart, and a lot of people are. Well, I mean, I've not been a defund the BBC person, but my God, they are. I think they've crossed the line so many times now. I find it intolerable. I really do. Stuart, so appreciate your call. Feeling very strongly about that. Let's go to Alex. He's in Cheltenham, and Alex, you want to talk about the welfare reforms?
Yeah, but I was just going to say, Sarah really doesn't understand the two-child benefit cap. I mean, that's mad. Like, if you have like 8, 9 kids, be on universal credit, it's like $100,000 a year job. We're literally encouraging people to have more kids. Like, we don't have enough kids being born, but we're encouraging people in completely workless households to have as many kids as possible.
I mean, it is genuinely mad. But the fact that she seemed to think quite clearly that it was about benefit, you know, that you have a kid and you get child benefit, whatever it is. How is it? 20 quid a week? It's been a long time.
There would be people getting more take home on UC that would take them above the level that would cut you off from child benefit if you were earning.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it's ridiculous.
But it is painful, isn't it? What do you make of the welfare reform vote coming tonight and Rebels and...
I work with people with disabilities, and I've filled in quite a lot of PIP forms for people. I understand the system. For people who are genuinely disabled, quite often when they filled it in themselves, when they don't understand it, they didn't get given PIP.
Yeah, they need help. Everyone advises go to someone to help you, fill it in.
No, so you've got genuinely disabled people that don't get it, and people that have watched enough videos on TikTok to understand the system that do get it.
And that's it. We all want the people who need it to get it. But also, I imagine a lot of people going, quite honestly, I'm looking through the questions like, in terms of your help you need for eating or getting dressed and things. And people want to be really, really scrupulously honest, and they only get 2 points for this and 2 points for that, and then they won't get it. Whereas someone will go, I can't do that. 4 points.
Google PIP scoring sheet. They can print it off, and it tells them exactly what to write.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. People are playing the system. The key thing is we need to get the people who are playing the system off the system and into work, so that we can make sure we can give help to the people that you work with who are genuinely in need.
The way Sarah's talking about two-child benefit is more worrying, because the idea that you just, if somebody's got 10 kids, you'd be giving him an extra 28 grand a year take home.
But except we got the 26 grand two-child benefit cap.
But is this
not benefit, just not two-child benefit cap, just the benefit cap, full stop.
Cap. But then if they then, would that not get lifted if they remove the two-child limit?
I mean, I don't know, but as you see, I mean, I'm not in government, but but there we are. I'm not making policy. I'll look it up and I'll make sure I know next time someone asks me. Alex, thank you very much. Indeed, difficult to keep up, isn't it, with an awful lot of the changes we've had in recent years. Lots more calls. Going to see if I can squeeze in another one before the top of the hour. We're going to have to take a quick break. First up, though, I must tell you about the reunion of the century. It's just around the corner. We're giving you a chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th, just 3 weeks away now. Yeah, you heard that right. Oasis Live 25 is sold out, but talk can get you in. That's not all, though. Alongside the tickets, we'll put you up for a night in a hotel and, wait for it, put a 5 grand in your back pocket. It's all completely tax-free. Listen up right now for everything you need to know and how to enter.
On iArcade, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and 5 grand spending money. Text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Good luck, yeah? Sorted.
Good luck in that competition. 12:38, it's time to take a quick break. They're going to be talking about the latest channel migrant figures. Yeah, you've guessed it. I know. They've gone up. And Miliband wanting to carpet over the whole of the country with solar panels. That's all coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
12:40 is the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Don't forget, if you did miss anything of the show, and if you missed my exchange with the new Runcorn MP for Reform, Sarah Pochin, where she apparently did not understand a basic reform policy on welfare. I mean, you know, I don't mean to be harsh, but I really do like MPs to know what the policies are that they do support on their party stance. I'm old-fashioned like that. Do take a listen to that. It's probably out on social media by now on X, but it's also going to be on our YouTube page. You can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, subscribe, and then you won't miss a thing. Right now, though, let's turn our attention to something completely different, but a regular topic on our show, and that's where we are with illegal migration. Let's talk to Lucy White. She's a public policy specialist. Joins us once again. Hello, Lucy White.
Hi, Julia.
Thank
How
you
are
for joining
you?
us. Very well indeed. Good to have you on the show. Now, there's a number of different stories here. One is the latest migration numbers. Not official yet, but it would appear that we had 900 arrivals yesterday, because the official figures up to yesterday were 19,100 arrivals so far this year. And we've already had some statements coming out that at 20,000 arrivals so far, record arrivals, 40% or something up on where we were this time last year. It would appear, going out on a limb here, not the end of the year yet, I don't think Keir Starmer has smashed the gangs. Do you?
No, absolutely not. But what I think is more startling is if we take a look back to 2018, there were only 299 individuals that crossed illegally by small boat. That was in 2018, less than 300. And now, this year alone, the year ending March 2025, there have been 38,000 illegal boat crossings of individuals, which is actually 127 times more in the last 7 years. So what on earth has happened in those?
Well, I mean, look, there was a massive closing down of the routes through lorries and on ferries. They basically they had a clampdown on that, and so people moved to the boats. And of course, we've had a big number of people getting involved in the smuggling gangs. There's this exponential rise. But clearly it's not being dealt with. But there's been quite a lot of anger in terms of what migrants are doing once they're here, claiming asylum. Virtually all of them are intercepted in the middle of the channel, and then they come on and they claim asylum. And the Sun exposed last week these drivers working illegally. They're here illegally, they've arrived illegally, they're put in an asylum hotel or asylum hostel, and then they basically work illegally. They get a few £100, even more than that, a week. They buy up a licence, effectively a pass, from someone who's registered as a Deliveroo, Just Eats or Uber Eats driver, rider, and they basically buy up, and then they earn all that money, and they're working illegally while we're paying for asylum hotels. I'm sure you're as pleased as I were to see that there has actually been at least some tentative action. Immigration police are actually cracking down on those riders yesterday after the Sun exposed the racket, and have actually seen some arrests. But is that going to be enough?
Well, what I think is concerning is that the job of immigration enforcement is actually to ensure that the immigration system works and that it's not being abused. And what I find concerning is that why would it take a journalist from the Sun to expose something, to push immigration tools into action? So on one hand, the positive outcome of this story is that people like us and journalists at the Sun must continue to expose these problems, because the more we expose them, we essentially force immigration enforcement into action.
Which they wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they must have been aware of this. Apparently, these hostels and hotels, they've just got dozens and dozens of these bikes with all the big boxes with the logos on. But no, didn't think they were being used to actually work, with knowing that it was illegal for these asylum seekers to work.
Well, I think the main issue, Julia, is that we have corruption embedded within the Home Office. So we had the case of a man called Imran Mullah, who would say to asylum seekers, OK, I will grant you asylum if you pay me, I don't know, £2,000 or £3,000 in cash. Yeah. And he was exposed. And quite frankly,
been convicted,
Yes, exactly. So we know that there's corruption within the Home Office. And quite frankly, this is our board of fools. I believe that there should just be British nationals working in the Home Office, because we have our best interests for the country at that job. Yeah. But someone such as Imran Mullah, I'm sorry, that's not exactly a British national name. He clearly
No, Lucy. I mean, I'm sorry. He there's no. I mean, I'm not being PC here, but people could have been here from a number of generations and have that name. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I do think that someone such as Imran Mullah, regardless of his name, is in the Home Office to take advantage of.
Okay, well, you know, my grandparents came from Ireland. You know, my husband's got clearly Irish names, but I mean, you know, I think you're entering into territory which we don't need to go into to make the point personally. But look, let's also talk about. I mean, they're going to have arrests. We're told that they're going to arrest these people. Don't know what they're going to do with them. They're already here illegally. They're not putting them in prison, are they? And they're going to be arrested. They've not got any money to pay a fine because, of course, it's all cash in hand when they get that money. But then these people haven't got a bank account here, I'm assuming. But then they're going to seize their bikes and seize their phones. One assumes they're just going to steal another phone and another bike, realistically, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. I mean, what's also concerning is that 67% of these asylum cases have been approved, about 51,000 since 2018. We've had about one-third of them rejected. But the question is, if there are further Home Office workers that were sort of mishandling these cases, I think we need to look back over the last 7 years as to who has been accepted and not.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do believe in the detain and deport policy. I don't think they should be granted luxury hotels in London, or even if they're not luxury, you know, you have people that work in London, they have to commute an hour and a half to get into the city. Yeah. They go back, they pay a lot of money on the train, and then you have the illegal migrants in the hotels who are not having to pay to commute. Yeah. They're already there in London.
I mean, again, they shouldn't be in private housing. They shouldn't be in hotels. The reality is they're going to have to be taken abroad. It's as simple as that. That's the only deterrent that's going to actually work. Lucy White, we'll have to leave it there. Times Against public policy specialist there. Lucy White, thank you. Tom Slater from Spiked Online. I mean, look, there's a bit of a crackdown. Of course, it's on the front page because it's been on the front page of The Sun for days on end. What's been going on with exposing. We spoke to the reporter who did a brilliant job on this. You know, actually working himself, literally turning up, going, "Oh, hell, I'm a legal migrant. I'm not allowed to work," and then being given this app. Being allowed to basically you hire the right to help you do this. There's a massive racket going on, and people go, "I wonder why these people want to come here. How do they survive on these incomes?" Because they're working illegally and they're undermining British workers who want to work legally.
It's been an open secret. Everyone's seen the Deliveroo backpacks outside of the asylum hotels. Yeah. Everyone's seen the inordinate number of Turkish barbershops. Everyone's seen the vape shops, which seem to far outstrip the actual demand. It's good.
Something's going on.
It's good to see that there's been a crackdown on this because it's so outrageous and exploitative. But also, you've got to deal with the problem at source, haven't you? The fact that people are able to come in.
And they want to come because they know they can do that when they get here.
Very unlikely to be deported if they do find themselves here.
Absolutely.
So if you could deal with these problems at source, smashing the gangs isn't going up. He's just smashing the records.
20,000 so far this year, not going well. 12:48, it's time to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk about Ed Miliband's bright idea to put enough solar panels that could carpet the size of the West Midlands to get us to net zero by 2030. It's not going to work. This is Talk.
that in modern policing there is a complete lack of common sense. Common sense is good. There is no good judgment anymore. Somebody can come in, give a theatrical performance, say my feelings are hurt, and the police will investigate. So the police can actually be used as a vexatious tool to silence people, because if you come in, it's very much on your emotions and your feelings and your impact statement, and you can talk a load of BS, but if you can give a convincing performance, the police will come out and investigate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Just that conversation we just had about illegal migrants. I have to raise this with you, Tom Slater. An NHS letter found outside an asylum hotel revealed that migrants are getting entitled not just to free eye tests, free prescriptions, free dental treatment, free glasses, but even wigs on the NHS. There's a document sent to a migrant at a hotel in Derby and is shown to be legitimate. This is one of the reasons why people are so angry about people arriving here, working on the black market, undermining jobs, being here illegally, costing us a fortune, and they're entitled to a load of stuff which, you know, people who are really struggling in this country are not. I mean, I don't know. I could work on the hair and get a wig. Free wigs
transitioning?
Even.
What's going on?
Probably free boob jobs. I don't know. But that's it. But people being entitled, people who've not paid in, you've not entitled to be here, being entitled to stuff which. And I'm not saying like, oh, you know, don't treat. You know, if you've got dental problems, but like, what? No, of course. Go and get an emergency treatment. But again, I don't understand why. And
it's upstream, isn't it? Because the thing is, they're here now, so of course they need to be housed. Of course they need to be looked after. You need to be humane, but at the same time,
create the problem.
Exactly. Deal with the problem upstream, and then we wouldn't have to be talking about it.
Absolutely. Right. Let's turn our attention to something else. Now, one of the reasons why our finances are in such dire straits is we're not getting growth because we haven't got cheap, affordable, reliable energy. And the reason for that is because with mad net zero policies started under the Tories, gone on to super drive boosters, rocket boosters under the Labour Party, and particularly under the zealot that is the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband. Well, his latest wheeze is to build enough solar panels to cover an area of Britain the size of the West Midlands over the next 5 years to get us towards those net zero targets 2030. Let's talk about this with Andy Mayer. He's an energy analyst at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good afternoon to you, Andy.
Good afternoon, Julia.
First of all, are we going to be building these solar panels? Because it seems to me that pretty much every solar panel in the world currently comes from China. So is the plan that we build them, or is China going to build them and then ship them in a coal-fired power station and then ship them over to us in a diesel-powered big boat?
So the report that's been issued isn't very clear on who is going to build the solar panels, but it's got 3 pages dedicated to reassuring the reader that it won't be built in China using slave labour. Built in China not using slave labour is perfectly fine with the minister, but then, as you say, diesel-powered tankers will bring them over on container ships, and we shall see whether that's actually a benefit to the planet or not.
I don't think that we've got energy that's cheap enough, given that it's 4 times the price of, say, American energy for manufacturing, for business energy prices, to be able to afford to build solar power panels here. Can we even afford to do that, given our energy prices, because of net zero policies?
Well, we're deeply unlikely to build most of the supply chain here. And as far as the net zero policy is concerned, it doesn't really matter very much. It's more about industrial strategy. There will be components that we're able to build in the UK. And the UK is more interested in the financing of this stuff. So we're quite innovative when it comes to green finance. It's interested in how you fit it all together in a system that might actually function, unlike, say, the Spanish system that fell over recently. And the UK wants to experiment with doing energy security better by mixing up solar farms with battery storage and potentially other forms of energy like nuclear power. So there's some prospect for the UK to get something out of it, but it's not really what's driving this. What's driving this is the obsession within government about carbon emissions.
Absolutely, and it is an obsession. I mean, it's kind of a religious level, sort of cult level obsession. But the idea of putting enough solar panels in an area, obviously it won't cover the West Midlands. It'll just be lots of different areas, but they're very unsightly. They also don't last as long as people think.
Yeah, so we have to be a little bit careful not to confuse instant reaction to the technology with it necessarily being a bad thing. So, yeah, solar farms are not popular. But then again, neither are wind farms, neither are fracking sites, neither are nuclear power stations.
Yeah.
And at some point, the government does have to turn around to the British people and say, stop whinging. You are actually going to have to get your energy from somewhere.
Yeah.
And solar shouldn't be discriminated against for any reason other than that it is exceptionally expensive. That's the main problem. So it's love the solar tech, hate the subsidies would be the wisest
Well,
part.
I mean, that's the key thing. It's not competing on an even keel. Now, of course, this is about meeting our net zero targets, official targets. And it was for 100% of, and again, people think it's energy. It's not. It's electric. If it was energy, we'd be back in the Stone Age. But our electricity to be net zero, so net carbon neutral. But it's now down to 95% because I think they realise even that was silly. But we still don't have a chance. Doesn't matter how many solar panels are built or how many wind turbines or how many nuclear power stations, if we could ever actually get around to building one, that we've got any chance of achieving anything close to 95%, let alone 100% of carbon neutral electricity, have we?
Well, not really. And the minister and the government in general have done themselves no favour by setting these highly ambitious targets that nobody, themselves included, believed could be met. I mean, there's nothing instinctively wrong with some parts of the solar plan. They're trying to make it cheaper and easier to deploy, which in general is a good thing for any type of energy.
Yeah.
It makes it much, the cost of the subsidy would then should go down. But if you have a target, you're setting yourself up for failure. And decarbonising the power grid 95% by 2030 is not going to happen because of all the problems built into the British planning system, which this plan alone will not resolve.
Well, this is the thing. So we've got a policy, we've got to spend a fortune on it, no doubt, and we're not actually going to achieve the policy the government wants, and we're probably not going to make our energy any cheaper, which is what we were promised.
Well, it will have some benefit. The areas that will have most benefit is where the land is right for solar development. There's good sunlight through most of the year. There isn't too much vegetation covering it. It will allow a little bit of experiment with new types of solar, new types of cells. That would be a good thing. But the bad thing is forcing it out at pace. So we don't need to deploy what is the equivalent of 1.5 nuclear power stations worth of solar power by 2030.
What would be really good idea is if we just built the nuclear power stations. But I'm old-fashioned like that. Reliable energy. Andy Mayer, energy analyst at the Institute of Economic Affairs, thank you. Tom Slater, I have to say, I thought he was rather more positive about this than I'd expected.
No, exactly. Considering what a terrible show Ed Miliband's been making of absolutely everything so far. I suppose the occasional good idea, but I think he could easily be the millstone around the neck of this government. If there weren't so many
signed up
already.
to this already. Everyone says, oh, it's Ed Miliband's a problem. It's Keir Starmer's policy.
No, absolutely. But they're actually... Ed Miliband is probably the closest person to Keir Starmer in politics. I know, obviously, Rachel Reeves is the partnership at the heart of this
she ain't going to be there for long.
But politically, they're basically the same person, so that's why he's not going to get rid of him anytime.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think he was almost Prime Minister 2015. He could have been our Prime Minister. Wow. Anyway, here's someone I'd vote for Prime Minister, Ian Collins.
Am I the only person that thinks that Ed Miliband looks a bit like Rachel Reeves? They could be brother and sister.
And a conspiracy is born.
Just put it
I like
and
that.
do you know they've never been on the front bench together? So I'm just making that point. You've been talking about wigs a little earlier.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
that's all it takes.
Some amazing developments there with Lucy Letby.